Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Fanfiction podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. Today, we're diving into a brand new story. PART6, the Renard Bunny Part 6, by Nuri_Kairos_Arcadia. Before we jump in, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. The tournament reaches the end. Tanjiro's POV. Bell raised his sword, his arm crossing in front of his face and around his neck while his hand held the blade behind his head. His body wasn't lowered into a stance, it was just standing upright, like it didn't need any preparation. His eyes held no emotion as they focused on his target. No, rather than no emotion, they held a deadly glare to them, and the glow overflowed with an overbearing pressure to them. In a way, it kind of reminded me of when I stood before the upper moons. A tiny insect before an invincible giant. Astral breathing style. First form. Kyuken no Setsudan. As soon as he said that, a thin horizontal blue line lit up the sky behind him. It ripped open like a fissure tearing through space and time, and a massive blue eye opened. Its star-shaped pupil stared at me, barely noticing that Bell's own eyes had the same pupils as the big one in the sky. I only saw the blade swinging halfway before a flash of a myriad of blue shades filled my vision, and immediately after my world went black. Omniscient POV. When Bell swung, a flash cut across the battlefield and the arena was wiped clean. Buildings, pillars, traps, anything that was on the arena beyond Tanjiro was gone. The place was turned back to a flat sandy arena like the first day of the tournament. Unlike the flamboyant light show of the sword technique, the sound produced was quite the opposite. There was the whistle of a blade cutting through the air, then every sound ceased as if you were placed in a vacuum. In the next instant the sounds all came back when the sound of glass shattering was heard. Holy shit, what was that? That was so cool. Oh dear Loki, what did I just witness? While the reactions ranged, there were two people that remained quiet but shocked. Noticing that, their goddess asked them why they were staying awfully quiet, never having seen such surprise from the two of them. Gil. Enkidu. What's the matter? Did you see that, Gil? Yes. The goddess, however, didn't seem to understand. It was for just a brief moment. The shortest of seconds, but in that split instant, his attack did something of almost impossible. Like my Enuma Elish does, his blade sliced right through the fabric of space and time. Now that was certainly a piece of information that did stun the goddess. Are you serious? Tampering with time and space isn't something that just happens, much less tearing them open. I mean, I had my life scared out of me when you did. I know, but I'm sure of it. I saw it. In the meantime, Tanjiro, who was knocked unconscious, fell limp to the ground face first like a sack of potatoes. Ibri tried calling out to the downed competitor to make sure he wasn't getting up before announcing the end of the match and Bell as the victor of the battle. Yorichi, along with Shinobu and Tanjiro's friends, rushed down to the arena. The Renard was inspecting the boy, worried that his attack had seriously injured him, which it did. Oh boy. Medical teams, please tend to Tanjiro immediately. It seems Bell has roughened him up a little too much. Ibri immediately called for the Dien sect and Ganesha familia after seeing Bell waving at him, trying to signal him for help. Shinobu, being the doctor of the familia, followed the guards to help Tanjiro, as did Nezuko and the others, leaving only Bell and Yorichi to slowly head back to the VIP stand. Sorry. It's fine. You were both testing your limits, and you have shown a magnificent battle. Besides, it's not the worst injury he's had. Alright. Please let me return this. Bell held the katana out to Yorichi, who placed it back in the sash clad around his waist. Thank you. Your astral breathing style was very impressive. I hope to see more of it once you have properly refined it and mastered it. Of course. He was incredibly proud to hear that from Yorichi of all people, but he also couldn't help but be disappointed. Not because of Yorichi, but rather due to a completely different problem. The issue was that he knew that there were still some inherent problems with his style. He still couldn't wield it properly despite having it made it himself. He needed to work on it quite a bit, but there was still something that he was missing, and he felt like it hadn't anything to do with how skilled he was, but rather it was something of spiritual in nature. He'd ask Takemikazuchi later, or so he thought, before the answer he was looking for was given to him, in a piece. Yorichi had seen through Bell's problem and immediately provided an answer. Your current issue relies in your state of mind, Bell. It is why your style, or any style as a matter of fact, will seem incomplete. I do not know what troubles you, but if you wish to know, then there is no better person to ask other than Takemikazuchi. He is a god of war, a warrior in soul and body. He will be able to help you better than I can. Thank you, Yoricha-san. But, was it that obvious? I'm over 300 years old, Belle. It is because of the experience that I gained that I can tell. I see. Please excuse me then. Great job, Belle. He was immediately jumped on by his girlfriends who congratulated him for his victory, soon followed by Takumi Kazuchi, Astrea, Amaterasu, Loki, and Baphomet Familia. Thinking about it, Belle resolved to leave the discussion with Takumi Kazuchi for later, instead wanting to enjoy his time with his friends and lovers. In order to celebrate the winners so far, they had all agreed to hold a large feast at the hostess, inviting Ganesha and any other familiar the participants had befriended. Az, Enkidu, and surprisingly Freya also decided to join. Though many were skeptical of the goddess of beauty, it was Ganesha's idea to invite her so as to be inclusive. Then again, no one could fault him. He was one of the few that had little enmities with Freya, and she readily agreed to join, albeit for a different reason, which none of the others knew about. Start of the match. Belle and Tanjiro entered the match when suddenly Freya raised from her throne and collapsed to her knees. No one other than her familiar witnessed this due to her preference for more privacy from the other gods, reason why she had been given a mountable partition to separate herself from where the other gods were. Freya-sama, what is the matter? Her executives rushed to her side almost immediately, but she ignored them completely. There was something of more important in front of her. With a delirious smile, she raised her head and stared at the arena, pushing Alan out of the way. She had been captivated by the soul of one of the participants. It was special, unique even. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen in her endless life. A priceless beauty compared to anything this world had to offer. No diamond or gem was as valuable, and no art piece was as beautiful. It was something she had never seen before, an awakened soul. Something that was only mentioned in legends. But right now, right here, that evolution was taking place in front of her eyes. It was just the first stage, but it radiated a light that made the goddess crazy. Panting and huffing, she grabbed onto Horn's arm, who helped her back to her seat, never letting her eyes wander off from the Renard that entranced her so much. It was what she had desired and sought out for so long. She was sure of it. She wanted nothing more to hold that brightness in her arms. To have him for herself, the being she had saved all of herself for. A soul she vowed to give everything to. But that would be difficult now more than ever, and it grew harder by the day, not that she knew of that. Otter, I have a task for you. Her violet eyes admired the Renard's soul from her table, far off to the side compared to the rest of the people that were present there. It had been nearly 2 hours, but this whole time Freya had been completely focused on staring at the Renard, who was, much to her irritation, being showered with love by his beautiful girlfriends. There was no doubt that her task to make him hers would be extremely difficult, but that made it much more entertaining for Freya. Though she always got what she wanted, she wasn't like Apollo. She wanted the experience of a challenge, for things to prove difficult to get. It wouldn't be as fun otherwise, nor would it feel satisfying as it wouldn't prove her abilities in any way. Besides, she knew that forcing herself on him would do nothing but damage the soul and her connection to him. She had to admit, however, that the envy that surged in her heart as she watched her object of affection be cuddled by other girls was definitely not a pleasant feeling. Not that she had any choice other than to bide her time for now. Even so, she patiently waited for Otter to return from the job she had given him. Freya-sama, I have done what you requested. And Otter, despite the results of his task, did not hesitate. I have investigated him and asked the guild, but there is little to no information on him. His name is Bell Yamato Katsuki. All that is known is that he came from a village far north. The location of his hometown is unknown. He appeared one day and joined the hostess of fertility before eventually joining the Takumi Kazuchi familia. He was level 4 when he arrived and leveled up when he performed an expedition for his familia with the support of the Astrea's familia captain. The other thing that he has done that increased his reputation are helping a familia that was past paraded by his own familia, fighting the monster outbreak, and of course, participating in the tournament. And you are purposefully missing out a few things, such as how and why the little phoenix is so infatuated with him. Elise and Belle met here at the hostess. Their first meeting started with Belle punching Elise. The interest initially arose from his incredible strength, which apparently happened with Tsubaki as well. According to some, it was love at first sight, but after he took care of a bunch of people causing problems, she apparently fell for him. So much so, that she asked him on a date right then and there, to which Belle agreed and eventually developed to what it is now. Freya remained silent for a while as she looked at Belle and his girlfriends around him. The connection between Belle and Elise was incredibly strong. She noticed that the Eastern princess's, Mazesh's soul, was also intertwining with Belle's, with the next strongest ones being Tsubaki, Artoria, and Kagaya, followed by Akagi, Shinano, and Ryu. Interestingly enough, it seemed others like Amaji, Astrea, and Kaga seemed to also hold some kind of attraction towards Belle, though much weaker compared to the other girls. She could only imagine how many girls had been ensnared by the Renard. She already knew of the secret fan club that was made and was rapidly growing in face of his increasing popularity. On the other hand, she couldn't help but ask herself who exactly he was. How could such a strong person have no background whatsoever? But even if she asked her informants, she had this divine intuition that told her that she'd learn nothing of his identity. The more mysterious he became, and the more questions arose of his identity, the more interested she was in finding out more about him. How interesting. Belle's ears and tail twitched slightly as he felt the penetrating and almost lustful gaze of someone. He discreetly looked around, but amongst the large crowd of people and lively atmosphere, he couldn't really tell who it was. Far too many people had their attention on him, particularly after the fleshy move he performed earlier on Tanjiro. Speaking of him, he now sat, albeit painfully, opposite of him. His wounds healed and bandaged by Shinobu and the medics of the Dien sect familia. Kanao and Nezuko needlessly worried over his health, much to his embarrassment, but the Renard was glad to see that he was fine. Even if his intention wasn't to kill him, nor did he intend to harm him too badly, his move was a deadly technique that could easily kill someone if he lost focus for even a moment. Belle Akagi, now somewhat drunk, was leaning all over his right side, poking at his cheek to try and get his attention. Nay, I got everyone's approval. So will you date me now? Hearing that, Belle turned to his 4 girlfriends, who nodded, though Musasha did so with an awkward scratch of her head, knowing how troublesome the vixen could be. Not that she could refuse her, she was her sister after all. I did say that I'd agree if they all said it was okay, so I can't say no to you now. The pure and bright look of joy on her face was irresistibly cute, but he couldn't help but notice the teary pout of Shinano as she slumped onto the table in complete defeat, with Kaga and Amaji drawing circles on her back to try and comfort her. Hee, you're all mine now. Akagi tightly hugged his side, nuzzling between his shoulder and neck. But remember, one step at a time. Mao, then when will you bed me? Belle blushed at the question, not knowing how to respond to that, both because he didn't know when he'd feel ready for that with Akagi, as well as wondering how she could be so open and shamelessly honest in public, particularly with such topics. Eventually. Akagi clearly wasn't too satisfied with the answer, but it was better than nothing to her. She had taken a huge step, now it was only a matter of time, and she would just need to convince him to take it a step further, which according to Elise, it wouldn't be too difficult. For now, she'd gingerly wait for the day he'd finally embrace her. That, however, didn't mean she couldn't tease him and tickle him. Akagi, he quietly exclaimed in her ear as one of her hands snuck behind and grabbed his tail, gently but continuously fluffing it. The vixen didn't answer as she began gently kissing his cheek. Belle meanwhile was left to answer the questions of a curious pair of Amazons from the Loki familia, all the while trying to hide and keep himself from bursting out in laughter. The following hours were just pure torture for the poor boy, while Akagi enjoyed being held onto as his arms tightly embraced her. Luckily or unluckily, depending on whose of the 2 points of views you considered, Artoria came to his rescue. Belle, since we're both competing tomorrow and we might even face each other, how about we train a bit more before the tournament? I asked Elise and said we could sue the training ground in the Stardust Garden. Sure. With an excuse to finally escape Akagi's clutch, he took Artoria's hand and led her away, with Elise following close behind. As they left for the training grounds, Taika Mikazuchi, the Miss Baphomet, Astrea, and Amaterasu excused themselves with their familiars as they were interested to see how the sparring sessions would go. Freya frowned, knowing that she had no excuse to follow them. Even with Ganesha, though officially she was on neutral terms and Ganesha didn't mind her, she wasn't very liked by his familia. As for Astrea, Loki, and most of the other familiars present, she was neither liked nor officially on good terms with neither the gods nor the familiar members. Let's go, Otter. Under the night sky, the warriors of the 3 familiars gathered around as they watched Belle and Artoria fight against Elise and Kagaya respectively. Elise and Kagaya had offered to give some pointers to them, reason why they were the ones sparring. Later, Belle and Artoria would spar between them to learn from each other before the match to try and gain the advantage. Belle, without his skill, could not match Elise. Both were skilled, and despite his higher-than-normal status that put him at the same level as a level 6, he still couldn't beat the Phoenix that had been level 6 for several years now. Even if he were to use his skill, she too could boost herself with her fire ability, which would let her maintain the advantage. The only chance he had of truly defeating her was if a full moon appeared. Truly worthy of the title of Captain of the Astrea Familia. Few people could match Otter, and fewer so with the difference of an entire level. Amongst the people currently in Orario, Bell guessed that the only ones who could defeat Otter were the level 7s of the Amaterasu Familia, the level 7s of the Baphomet Familia, and the enemy of the Amaterasu Familia who supposedly had at least a level 7 in their army. Though Elise could match Otter, that didn't mean she could defeat him. Not only that, but Bell was sure that there were many monsters, people not actual monsters, hiding in this world, concealing their strength, like the rumored Knights of Knights. Even Zeus, who told him about him, didn't know who he was, only that apparently he belonged to the Poseidon Familia that vanished a couple of years back for reasons unknown. However, should warriors like Arthur, Artoria, and Gilgamesh reach level 7, then they would probably be even more terrifying than Otter and the Knights of Knights. That is why he couldn't afford to slack off, to not always be pushing himself to the brink of his capabilities, to break through every limit he had. Only through sheer monstrous effort would he be able to restore the fallen Zeus and Hera Familia. Initially becoming a hero and restoring the former glory of that familia was all there was to it, but quickly, more and more reasons added themselves. Protecting his familia, the hostess and his dear girlfriends. They had all become too precious to him to forget that he needed the strength to protect them. Not bad, Bell, but you still have a bit to go if you want to match me. Bell smiled as the red-haired captain grabbed his hand and pulled him into a hug as the spar ended. Now let's see how you fare against Artoria. Turning to where Elise pointed, he saw Artoria unsheathing her blade. She was sweaty and bruised from the beating she received from Kagaya, but looked determined to continue anyways. Behind her, the rest of her familia all cheered on for her, while Takemikazuchi and his familia cheered for him. Are you sure you don't need to rest? As usual, Bell couldn't help but worry about his girlfriend, but she defiantly shook her head. There was no time to be lazing around. That was the message her eyes were giving Bell. He took the weapon made by Tsubaki and got into position. There was a moment of silent tension before they both swung at each other. As tired as Artoria was, Bell wasn't too far behind. Elise, despite how much she loved him, she did not hold back when hitting him. In a way you could, that is her form of love. To avoid him losing when it mattered, she'd beat him mercilessly, well as mercilessly as her loving heart allowed. As they locked their blades with a vertical slash, neither could get the advantage over the other one, though Bell was slowly pushing her back given his superior strength. Artoria put everything she had into her muscles, gnashing her teeth as she overexerted herself to try but failed in pushing him back. Before she lost her strength, she decided to parry the attack. From there the two started swinging at each other, blocking and parrying attacks as their metal blades clashed with enough force that it would shatter a tree's trunk in 1,000 splinters. With each attack, the audience could feel the shock waves and air hitting them as the ever-increasing intensity of their spar was starting to destroy the field. Usually they'd be able to go on for hours, but the beating from the top members of the Astrea Familia had worn them down and the end came much faster than normal. Artoria swung down diagonally and met Bell's blade. The Rubellite sword that was held horizontally over the Renard's head didn't budge despite the boulder-crushing force put in Artoria's strength. She was caught off guard when a sudden surge in force pushed her back and their positions were exchanged, only that the princess was struggling to hold on. She slowly lost ground and it seemed like the match was going to be settled, except something unexpected happened. Wisps of red and black energy started coming off of the blonde girl's body, though few noticed. It looked like everything was about to take a turn for the worse when Arthur jumped up and stopped the match. Artoria pouted, clearly annoyed that he stopped their spar, but he left no room for argument, saying she had to rest for tomorrow. Feeling defiant, she hid behind Bell and tightly embraced him from behind as she refused to go home. I'll stay with Bell today. What dash? Haha, let her be Arthur. She's in her rebellious phase. She just got a boyfriend and experienced what love feels like. Besides, it's natural for teenagers to be attached to the hip like that. Merlin chuckled, and with the help of the Miss and Guinevere they dragged the complaining king away. The rest of the group also broke away, each returning home, leaving Bell to be the only male in the headquarters of the Familiar of Justice. Well now, before you all go to sleep, Artoria and Bell, you two should take a bath. You're both dirty and sweaty from all the exercise today. The same goes for you too, Elise, Kagaya. You're not allowed into bed until you clean. Astrea hinted, more like commanded, the exhausted warriors to go wash, giving Elise a great idea. With a bright smile, she grabbed Kagaya and Artoria and held them back to whisper something in their ears that made them blush while Bel unsuspectingly made his way to the bathroom. He entered the changing room after telling the goddess that he'd go in first and dropped his clothes in the basket. Opening the door, he sat himself on the stool and began cleaning his fluffy tails. With his 9 tails no longer being a secret, there was no need to be vigilant about them. Besides, no one would intrude in the depths of the bath. Except there were those who did. His ears twitched as he heard the rustling of clothes followed by the door opening. He didn't bother feeling alarmed considering where he was, so he slowly turned only to turn around just in time for his face to be enveloped in the warmth of 2 round and extremely soft orbs. Looking up, he spotted the grinning face of Elise. "Hey, Elise." His calm and relaxed look turned into a blushed, shocked face. "Hee, I brought you a present." Pointing behind her, Kagaya and Artoria stood proudly and shyly respectively. Kagaya grinned and, like Elise, stood in all her naked glory. She blushed but hid nothing of her body. Contrarily, Artoria held a thin white towel to hide the front of her body. Her abnormally bright blush and the way she wouldn't meet his eyes showed just how embarrassed she was. It didn't help Bel, however, that her cuteness was enhanced by the sexiness of her body. The towel, though it covered all her womanly areas, was not big enough to hide her plump body completely, leaving all the sides and most of her legs exposed, showing off only the curves of her godly body. Her shapely thighs, her waist, and the side of her large chest, it perfectly highlighted how voluptuous her body was. Of course, Kagaya was also beautiful, but Artoria was outright perfect, rivaling Musasha as expected of royalty. Besides, being in the bath with 3 women was extremely stimulating for the poor Renard. "Like what you see, dear." Kagaya walked over and kneeled down in front of him while Elise took her place behind him. Artoria also hesitantly approached him, causing him to turn to her only to make her try to hide her body more. She looked down while he gazed at her, his attention completely captured by her. "Please, don't stare too much." Kagaya smirked as she saw their reactions as well as the rising reaction of something else. Meanwhile, Elise grabbed the soap and began rubbing it all over the front of her body before grinning. "You know, I've always wanted to try this." "Huh." Elise suddenly pushed herself against Bel, rubbing her body against his. "Kyun." His look of surprise was priceless as his girlfriend began rubbing her bare soapy body against his back, spreading the soap and cleaning him. Kagaya and Artoria watched as Bel squirmed from feeling Elise's boobs firmly pressing against him, but the Far Eastern girl didn't like doing nothing but watching and proceeded to imitate Elise. "Wait, Kagaya." Bel found himself sandwiched between the 2 girls as they washed his front and back. All the while, Kagaya grew more and more excited as she could clearly feel the increasing length of his cock growing against her stomach. Bel endured the torture as they finished turning his body into a soapy mess. "Now that we cleaned you, why don't you do us a favor and do the same for us?" Gulping, he followed their instructions and waited for them to sit on the stools in front of him before cleaning their backs. "Now the front, Bel. See, can't you do that yourself? I'm always amazed how innocent you can be despite what you did to me and Musasha. But no, Bel, I can't do it myself because I have an amazing boyfriend who can do it for me right now. So please." Bel began at the stomach and slowly moved up, trailing up from the underside of her boobs before cupping them and gently kneading them. Elise let out a little satisfied moan but pouted as Bel moved to Kagaya as soon as he was done to do the same. While the Renard busied himself with his black-haired girlfriend, the captain turned her attention to the princess. She knew she was doing her best not to run out, and she was definitely ready to get the same princess treatment. "Artoria, come here." Knowing she wouldn't be able to let Bel be the one cleaning her, she opted to quickly do it herself before washing off the soap with water. Now fresh and clean, she grabbed the blonde knight's hand and brought her over to the bath and dipped in. It's so nice to be able to relax with a bath after training." Elise." "Yes. What about Bel and Kagaya?" She glanced over and saw Kagaya smiling giddily as Bel was still cleaning her arms and thighs. "Leave them be. Actually, we'll need to leave in a moment. So take 5 minutes to relax in the bath, then we'll leave." "Why? Do you want to stay and watch as they get it on?" "I wouldn't mind, but I don't think you're ready for that. Besides, it would be torture since I can't join, as I promised her first time to be with her alone, so that Bel can focus on her and only her." Artoria took a minute before bursting into several shades of red as she understood what she meant. Here. Admittedly, I wouldn't say it's the best place to be sharing your first moment. You'd expect the bedroom or maybe under the starry sky. But according to Kagaya, there was a romantic aspect about doing it in the bath. I'm sure it's got to do with the Far East. They seem to have a thing for baths, though I believe she called it an onsen. Anyways, let's leave before Kaguya can't hold herself back anymore. The two girls got up to leave and waved at Kaguya, who smirked. Belle looked confused as they left, but soon his attention was returned to Kaguya as she spun around and gently grasped his face with her hands. Now that they are gone, it's time to have some time to ourselves. Hey Elise, you shouldn't say that. Am I wrong? His ears fell as he grumbled. Now go to sleep, silly Renard. You have a big match tomorrow. Night, Elise. Love you. Hee, love you too, so very much. Tsubaki was unamusingly staring down at Kaguya. Under the towering half-dwarf, she didn't dare look up to her eyes, simply finding the walls interesting. The smith could tell from her glow when she first arrived at the Colosseum that she got laid. So, I thought we agreed I was first. I forgot. Well, I didn't, but it was like such a golden opportunity. I mean, does it even matter? It's not like you can't do it with him now that I did. Either today or tomorrow you'll get your chance. Fine. But I will remember this and I will get back at you. Fair enough. Luckily it was a dispute that was solved peacefully, but Belle couldn't help but notice that Tsubaki was still a little bitter from this. This is where he came in, as the role of boyfriend. He approached the smith from behind and tightly embraced her with his tails and arms, wiping the frown on her face and replacing it with a loving smile. I get it, no more frowning. Thank you. She felt giddy as his lips placed a chaste kiss on her cheek. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the semi-finals. Today we have a great match between two of the greatest ladies of Orario. Ryu, Lion of Estrella Familia, a fighter of justice and the forest fairy known as the Gale. Against her, Ais Wallenstein of Loki Familia, an adventurer that delves into the depths of the dungeon and the beauty known as the Sword Princess. Everyone took their seats as the two warriors stood face to face, each wanting to win and refusing to accept even the idea of defeat. Their familia was watching and their honor, and Orario's, was at stake. Besides, they had to look good for someone. I apologize, Kenki, but I cannot afford to lose, so I hope you will be accepting of the defeat you are about to experience. Ais showed almost no reaction, simply frowning a little. I won't lose. We'll see about that. Seeing the sparks flying between their glares, Ibri took it as a signal they were both ready. Let the match start. What not many knew was that there had always been a kind of rivalry between them, and with the stakes today it was an all-time high. There were no words, and the moment the match began the two wasted not even a second to rush at each other. The first contract ended with both of them deflecting and shooting past, skidding to an end with a quick spin and immediately attacking forwards again. The blonde knight swung desperate down towards the elf, who barely avoided getting her ear nicked with a quickly timed sidestep. She tried taking advantage of her extended hand as it presented a small opening, but Ais was quick to react and spin her body, retracting her arm just in time for their blades to collide, avoiding a nasty gash to her side. The recoil from Ryu's hit, however, sent her jumping back, allowing the elf to press the advantage and slightly push her back with a barrage of rapid and deadly attacks. She fluently connected each attack, performing a vicious combo with strong and precise attacks. If Ais missed the timing on any of her parries or blocks, she'd definitely end up with an injury that would put her at a massive disadvantage. She grit her teeth in frustration, not expecting for Ryu to have become as strong as she was. It had only been 30 seconds since the start of their match, yet it seemed like she was already at a disadvantage and she was not having it. As usual of the Kenki, she tried pressing aggressively, and for the next 10 minutes the two exchanged a series of swift attacks. Each one was busy dodging, parrying, blocking and deflecting to maintain their uninjured form. It would have been difficult for regular people to do so, but the two of them weren't just high-leveled adventurers, they were also highly experienced and skilled individuals who performed the least amount of movement. Each one of their techniques were designed to waste as little energy as humanly possible. This allowed not only faster and more unpredictable attacks, but it also ensured to save a lot of stamina. This would make it so that they can fight for longer, and with their pride and confidence in their sword skills, it was clear that the only way the two would settle for a win would be an endurance contest. Everyone watched in awe as for nearly an hour the two clashed swords and smacked each other with kicks and punches, yet none of their attacks diminished in intensity. Rather, they seemed to get faster, stronger and more precise. With each strike they improved each other, inexplicably understanding how to correct the mistakes in their forms and seemingly gathering excelia at an alarming rate. The two had both been at level 5 for a few years now and had already reached the max possible points in several of their stats. This fight could very well present their chance to level up. However, the victor was still far from being decided. The two had roughened each other up for the past hour, But there were still no bruises or cuts, only slightly battered clothes. The real fight started now with AIS unleashing her wind and Ryu concurrently chanting her wind spell. Despite the increase in Ai's speed and with the shield deflecting some of her attacks, Ryu didn't lose concentration and maintained her spell. The elven warrior let the princess press her and push her back, leading her towards the edge of the arena. AIS was surprised when she suddenly found her wrist grabbed and swung around. Luminous wind. Ais's eyes shot up and saw she was surrounded by spheres of green. In her distraction, she barely blocked Ryu's sword before receiving a kick to the stomach that sent her flying back into one of the orbs. Luvia. The orb that collided into her back went off, sending her down to the ground, which Ryu took advantage of and sent all the others ones rushing towards AIS. The princess was struck by several dozen balls of wind, each one exploding as soon as they hit her. The elf immediately jumped back and waited for a response, knowing this was not the end yet, and proving her right was several eyes jumping out in each direction. It was the spell that had surprised everyone, as she had suddenly developed it during her last fight. Magic that created copies out of wind. When slashed they'd disappear, but if hit by them they'd slash you like a blade of wind slicing through you. Not only that, it was now 1 against 6, and she had no idea who the real knight was. As an experienced fighter and a level 5, her movements were swift and light, so it was impossible to distinguish them from sound alone. AIS only gave her a moment to realize that she was surrounded before attacking her. 6 blades made their way towards her. It would make many panic, but Ryu wasn't amongst them. Rather than seeing the impending doom, she saw a chance and took it. As they began moving forwards, Ryu jumped back into one of the Wind Knights, but just before the blade could reach her she spun around and positioned herself behind. With one diagonal slash, the wind clone was sent into smokes. It was also then that the elven warrior noticed something particular about the clones. She saw how small objects like pebbles would go through the clones, while waves of dust would move in weird ways near the clones due to them being made out of wind currents that flowed differently from the wind in the environment they were in. Ryu felt herself smile as she understood how to deal with them and charged. She took AIS by surprise when she instantly got rid of the clones, by nicking each one on the arm or leg and causing them to dissipate. Now in a blink of the eye, she stood only a couple of steps away from her. AIS conjured her wind and shielded herself from the strike of Ryu's wooden sword, but a second and third weakened the green wind. 4th and 5th created gaps it, and a 6th shocked everyone as it dispersed it. Loki herself couldn't really believe it, since she had seen how durable it was. If it had been broken by her luminous wind it would have even made sense, but with just brute strength was something unheard of. AIS was the first to begin to get tired, her breathing slightly turning to panting. The blonde knight tried to think of ways to get back at her, but nothing of good seemed to be coming to her mind, and at this rate she'd slowly but surely lose. She found herself steadily losing ground, and with both of them having shown all their cards, there was only one thing left that AIS could use, but she hesitated. It was her ultimate trump card that at full strength even Otto would have to use all his strength to neutralize, but it was a move reserved for monsters and with the intent of killing the target. Something she swore to never use on another person. However, as Finn had told her, extreme situations called for extreme measures. This match was just that important to her. That and Reveria had promised her both to allow her in the dungeon alone, as well as a whole cart load of Jagamarucans just for her. She put all her strength in the next wide vertical arc that stopped Ryu's momentum and pushed her back, giving her the time to put some space between them. Her winds glowed green as they began spinning faster and growing sharper. She charged forwards and pointed her ultimate attack at Ryu. A rapid cone of wind shot forwards, devastating everything in front. Lil Rafaga. Astrea record. However, she wasn't the only one with a trump card left to use. Everyone was surprised when Astrea Familiar's emblem appeared beneath her feet in the form of hieroglyphs made of light, which began shooting out of Ryu. The glyphs split in two, half remained spinning and floated around Ryu like stars, while the other half started crystallizing around her, forming a 5-meter-wide barrier. The Star Sanctuary, as Astrea called it when she first saw it, stopped AIS right in place, completely blocking her attack. The mission has been fulfilled. The scales are balanced. The fortress of order, the crown of integrity, the flame of justice. Under the name of the goddess, as if flying through the sky, we just trace the footsteps of the stars on this earth. Justice shall prevail. Having lost all her momentum, AIS retreated as her barrier collapsed and was absorbed into her body. Agaris Alvacinth. Even Elise was surprised when the elven body was clad in bright emerald flames and rushed the sword princess. With her enhanced strength and speed, AIS was quickly overpowered, and after 10 attacks, A kick struck the knight in the stomach. Her body crashed against the wall of the arena, crumbling the stone with the force she landed with. AIS struggled to get back up, but before she could, Ryu kicked the half-raised weapon away and pointing her blade at the now disarmed blonde girl. AIS frowned but knew that this was over. Both of them were battered and bruised. Both were panting and tired, but Ryu won while she lost, again. The match is over. Ryu Lion of Estrella Familia is the winner. AIS looked down in shame and frustration while Ryu's eyes darted to the stand, almost as if desperately looking for someone's approval and reaction. She skipped over her familia, stopping a second on Elise and Estrella, but almost instantly her eyes were drawn to Belle's bright smile. If only she had noticed Elise and Kagaya giggling at her wide smile, she would be smoking red with embarrassment. Her heart swelled with joy and pride at the look on his face. She only wished she could be closer to him. So far, she had always held back because he was Elise's lover, but with her permission and the fact that more and more girls were joining, she decided to no longer hold back, and soon she'd make it known to the world. Belle watched in awe as Ryu unleashed an unknown spell that brought her victory. As the match was announced to have ended, he jumped to his feet alongside everyone else and began cheering for her, flashing a gentle smile as their eyes locked. They stared at each other for a while before the elf began making her way back to the stands. As soon as she entered, she was swarmed by her familia, with Elise being particularly interested. "Wow, what was that lion?" Elise jumped on the elf, who awkwardly received the compliments but was busily searching for Belle. "Belle is off preparing for his match. You just missed him. More importantly, how come I didn't know of that spell?" "That's because little Ryu recently developed that spell and only I have seen it before today." Estrella came to the poor girl's rescue, explaining the spell that she just demonstrated. "It is a spell that, as you have all seen, creates a barrier while chanting, and once she is done chanting, she can name the spell of any one of you who had my Falna and use it. For example, she named Egoris Alvacinth, your spell Elise. Doing so allows her to skip the chant and instantly activate your spell to use it for herself. Of course, this applies to the spells of anyone in my familia." The girls of the familia were all left staring incredulously at Ryu with a big open mouth. "That's so incredibly powerful, Ryu." Noin excitedly jumped up and down hearing that. It was definitely a massive boost to the Estrella Familia's strength, and it also meant that any future members who joined the familia would be handing Ryu an extra arsenal of magic spells. Now for the last of the semi-final matches. Welcome the Belle Yamato Katsuki, rising star of Orario, the white nine-tailed Renard of the Takamikazuchi familia. Facing him, Artoria Pendragon, the warrior queen of Britannia, the queen of knights, the wielder of 3 divine weapons. The 2 contestants entered, but what everyone saw was not what they were expecting, not even the members of the Takamikazuchi and the Miss Familia. It was clear that neither were going to hold anything back. They brought out their best equipment and strode forwards into the light with pride. Artoria was clad in her usual blue and gold outfit, but donned a stunning silver armor. A sharp chest plate, thick greaves and gauntlets and massive shoulder pads. Her head was covered by a shiny helmet that had lion-like mask with golden fur sprouting from the back of the shoulder pads and the helmet. A full-plated armor you'd expect a legendary knight out of a fairy tale to wear. By her side rested Excalibur, on her back she carried Avalon, but, in her hands, she wielded Rongo Miniad, the holy lance that no one had ever seen before, even Charlemagne, the holy emperor, the only level 6 and captain of the Adon Familia, had never seen the weapon said to symbolize the authority of the Tower of Light that anchored the layers of the world. He always desired to see its splendor in person, and today he could finally do that. Initially he wanted to obtain the weapon, but knowing how strong Artoria was and how divine weapons chose their own masters, he knew to abandon that goal. However, the even more surprising character was Belle. Tsubaki had worked tirelessly and in secret to prepare this gift for him. Unlike the elegant, almost regal appearance of his Far Eastern outfit, this time she went for something that suited the style of his sword better. Walking out in the light was a white Renard clad in full-plated armor like Artoria. A first-class armored battle outfit that she had named Crimson Love Armor. It was cheesy, but she refused to change it to anything else. As implied by the name, Belle was covered in bright red armor made of thick layers of high-quality adamantite. Unlike the princess, he wore no helmet, only using a crown-like headband that protected his forehead. On his back he carried the renamed Igneous Cupio, courtesy of Tsubaki, its creator. The two approached each other, their every step filling the arena with anticipation as the thundering noise of their armored steps brought them closer and closer until they were face to face. Unsheathing his blade, Everyone noticed how there seemed to be a live fire burning at the core of the weapon, as if alive. The two at a sword's length of distance got into their respective stances and prepared to fight. Ivory had no reason to keep the exciting from happening. Across Orario, pubs and bars were filled with people, each placing their bets on who would win. The odds were pretty even, having shown that both had been black horses completely dominating the battlefields they fought in. No one knew who to expect to win, but it didn't matter. Soon enough they'd all know. Ladies and gentlemen, let the last semi-final begin. May the greater warrior prevail. The tournament champion Belle and Artoria observed each other, neither taking the initiative to make the first move. It had been quiet for several seconds, then all of a sudden, they both rushed their opponent, and on their first swing, their weapons clashed. Everyone watching could see the shockwaves that came from the collision between their sword and spear that had sent the air rippling and the dust flying. With their level 5 strength, the two then proceeded to use the full extent of their skill with their divine armament, exchanging hundreds of attacks within seconds, which only high-leveled people could follow. All of that without every moving out of a radius of 3 meters. The sheer confidence and technique the two demonstrated truly showed why they were two of the candidates for the finals. But just 10 minutes in and things quickly escalated. Now making use of their movement and space, the two darted across the arena as they clashed time and time again. They quickly demolished the stage with their absurd strength. Yet none had used their skills or magic spells thus far. Artoria thrusted the spear, which he deflected with the flat of his blade before pushing outwards. The move would catch most off balance, but not Artoria, who instead raised her leg and kicked Belle to both stabilize herself and not give him a chance to react to the opening he had made. What she didn't take into consideration was for him to catch her and toss her away like a pebble. She roughly bounced and rolled, only stopping as she stabbed the long spear into the ground. Looking up, Belle was already on her, but as an experienced warrior she was quick to recover and guard herself, regaining the ground she had lost. The knight swung her lance horizontally, missing Belle as he ducked, and responded by aiming for her stomach with a thrust that was quickly blocked as she smashed the tip of her lance into the ground and blocked Belle with the spear head of her weapon. Not bad, Artie. I could say the same, Belle, but don't worry, I'll make sure to fluff your tail to my heart's content when I win. Oh no, I'll be the one enjoying cuddling the stuffing out of you, dear. The two giggled as they continued swinging at each other. She rapidly spun her lance, the weapon slicing through anything it encountered like a saw blade, to the exception of Belle's sword, the only weapon that managed to bounce off the destructive attack without receiving a dent. She repeatedly swung the spearhead at Belle before performing a spin with her body and grabbing the shaft with both hands and delivering a powerful blow with the full momentum of both Rongominiad's and her own body's momentum. The hit sent the Renard skidding back, the earth cracking under his feet as it could not bear the force exerted that was suddenly transferred. The princess charged forwards and thrust her spear. The tip smacked into the flat of Belle's great sword, a massive shockwave sending the dust flying as a resounding sonic boom could be heard beyond the clash of the two metallic objects. Belle lowered his stance, then angled his blade to aim at her, threatening to pierce her chest. Her spear's point had bounced upwards, leaving her vulnerable as her lover was suddenly within her swinging range. With her arm fully extended and the lance way above him, she now found herself unable to swing the weapon down and attack the Renard nor protect herself. Belle, on the other hand, could just thrust his sword forwards and he would be able to aim right for her chest, and that is what he did. Avalon. In a split moment she abandoned the lance and grabbed the hilt of the sword on her back. Calling out its name, she summoned its divine ability, the concept of absolute defense, and a glowing barrier formed around her, protecting her from the pointy end of igneous Cupio. With a kick she pushed Belle back before launching the divine lance like a javelin. Belle quickly reacted by slashing at the incoming weapon. The collision sent the weapon flying into the sky while turning like a spinner before it landed and impaled the ground. Bloom forth. Artoria heard him start the short chant of his spell and immediately grabbed Avalon off her back and dropped the sheath to make herself more comfortable and lighter. Charging forwards, she only made it halfway when an azure flower bloomed at his feet and blue vines shot towards her. One grabbed her right wrist, another her left ankle, and a third one grabbed her around her waist. Sorry about this, Artie. Kankyo. She screamed in pain as spikes suddenly darted out and stabbed right through her clothes, and she felt her energy sucked out of her. Belle, I will so get you, back for this. I'm sure you will, love. With a groan, she pouted at Belle. She would make sure to thoroughly deal with him later. His tails and ears were in for a nasty surprise, but that was for later. First she had to defeat him. Then she would get to play with him to her heart's content. Ascend from the heavens above, blade of justice, lightning of retribution. Artoria began showing her magical ability for the first time since she arrived in Orario. The golden and emerald magic circle enchanted many eyes with its beauty. Not knowing what to expect, Belle tried to interrupt her just like she had, but he was surprised when she simply snapped the vines off and threw Avalon at him. What's with her and throwing weapons? They are divine weapons. Show some respect, Artie. However, his attention was soon turned to the sky. The chant was done, and the spell formed. A massive golden sword made of magic illuminated the sky. Belle felt a bead of sweat trailing down the side of his face as he awkwardly smiled at his princess. We can talk about this, right, Artie? We'll do a lot more than talking, Belle. After the match is over and I win, that is dear. Now please kindly accept this sword for me. It is my symbol of love. Artoria felt oddly cheerful as she smiled brightly while she looked at Belle's discouraged look. Bringing her hand down, the sword began moving towards Belle. I pray to Lady Sun, hear the call of the Kitsune. Please grant the protection of this world's nature. Inari no Aegis. A big blue spell in the shape of a mixture of a round shield with a flower imprinted on it formed in front of Belle. As the sword descended from the sky and clashed against his magic shield, a bright light blinded everyone before being followed soon after by an earth-shaking shock. What happened? Who will be the winning side? When the light dimmed down, the sword was gone while the shield was severely cracked, a step away from shattering but still there, nonetheless. Really? You truly are a monster, sweetheart. Artoria couldn't believe that the shield had resisted her spell, said to have the same power as a spell of a level 6 mage. The same can be said about you, my princess. However, this is where the true fight would start. It was going to be much shorter than their initial fight, but the power and intensity they'd display was going to be unlike anything anyone had seen. Belle knew that as he saw the wisps of red and black appeared her, and instantly understood what she was doing. Summoning his own skill, the two sat silently while the audience watched with bated breath. Arthur watched shocked as Artoria wasn't surrounded by the black energy, rather she conjured it herself. Arthur wanted to go down there and stop the match, but Merlin and Themis stopped him. He was in disbelief at their sudden decision, but they simply shook their head. Have some faith in her. Things are going to be getting interesting. Baphomet nodded, agreeing with the miss. They sure are. Artoria was wrapped in a black cocoon, which soon later bloomed, revealing Alter Artoria. Her armor was black, littered with red cracks. Excalibur too had turned dark. Her visor was once again on, but unlike before, her energy wasn't wildly going berserk. Belle in the meantime gathered his 9 moons, a white and blue aura enveloping him as his stats were boosted. His tails and ears grew a little, his fur became fluffier and began glowing. The changes were subtly different, confusing Elise and Taika Mikazuchi. One moment they stared at each other, the next moment they were face to face, their blades crossed. The entire city felt the impact as their collision shook the arena with a powerful shockwave that shattered the ground beneath them. The two warriors sank down as they formed a massive crater at the center of the arena. The metal screeched and sparks flew as the two grinded their swords when moving in opposite directions. Once again, the two swung, but with the increase in strength and speed, their blades now just barely grazed each other's armor with their tips. Artoria swung Excalibur from below in a vertical arc, which Belle deflected with a straight strike down. He immediately followed it by twisting his wrist and brining his blade back diagonally upwards while she sidestepped to dodge it. As she brought the blade down, Belle guarded and blocked the attack before accompanying the divine sword down and pushing it outwards, away from him. The princess immediately jumped back as another swift movement nearly sliced her neck before charging back forwards. Vertical, horizontal, then diagonal. She tried breaking his guard only for him to parry perfectly every time. With a twist, Belle carried his momentum and struck her blade just as she leaned against it to better defend herself against the insane strength Belle possessed. No more holding back. The dark energy started converging on her blade before she shot a beam at Belle. Once again, Belle summoned his shield, which upon collision with the deadly attack, it split the beam into 1,000 strands that peppered the shield, protecting the audience. However, his limit was to block 1 or 2 of those magic attacks, and Artoria knew it just as much as Belle. So she started throwing everything she had at him. Magic beams, magic arcs, and even magic bullets. Belle saw the wave of destruction coming towards him and did the only thing he could think of doing. The only thing that could protect him better than his shield, against magic at least. The answer to all his problems was to simply Tamamo Ball himself. Heh! Everyone watched in shock as Belle wrapped himself with his tails instead of running and dodging. Elise kept calm, trusting him, though his other girlfriends couldn't help but worry. Even Artoria worried he might get hurt, but in her state it was difficult to hold back. Others, on the other hand, were shouting at him to move, with a few remembering, or knowing, how his tales seemed resistant to magic. The rain of magic hellfire lasted a full minute before it finally ended. The princess panted, tired from the onslaught, but more importantly to her, she worried if he was okay. If she hurt him badly, she would never be able to forgive herself. Damn it, I shouldn't have used this skill without learning how to control it. When the dust cleared, however, standing amongst the ruined battlefield, among the many craters, collapsed buildings, and shattered pillars, laid a single large spherical orb of fluff. It was unusually clean and shiny, clearly not injured. "Ha, Belle, my sweet knight, you really are a monster sometimes." Poking his head out, Belle adorably shook his head before looking at Artoria. For a while he just stared, then a smug smile bloomed on his face. Cheeky Renard. He undid his safe haven and charged at Artoria. "All right, time to take a page out of your book, Elise." Running up to Artoria, he made sure to evade her horizontal swing and slip right in between her arms. He now found himself trapped in an unexpected hug, a surprise for Artoria as she found herself with her lover huddled between herself and Excalibur. "Why did you trap yourself?" "I didn't." WHHMPH. Belle stopped her from talking with an innocent, light and quick peck to her lips. It was perhaps the most innocent kiss he had exchanged in the past weeks, but it did wonders for the pure princess. Despite her skill suppressing her emotions, the intimate action made her love for him, and embarrassment, completely overpower both her skill and her mind. Why you?" Her visor fell off and shattered, revealing her incredulous look. "I will CC cut you down." She stumbled back before cutely glaring at Belle. She raised her sword, but, in her embarrassment, she clumsily swung it, completely missing the Renard, who grabbed her wrist and disarmed her before pushing her down to the ground. The match then ended as he pointed his sword at her. He could hear the approving and excited yelps of the girls, along the laughter of Tsubaki and Elise, as well as a few others like Gareth. He could also, however, hear Arthur screaming that he cheated and it was unfair to be using his love as a weapon against her sister, but the Renard only looked at Artoria. She shyly looked away, casting curious glances at him before looking away. "I admit defeat." She spoke quietly, but Ivory heard it all too well. "Ladies and gents, it's over. After an impressive battle and a shocking revelation of our Renard's invulnerability to magic, he gave us such an adorable ending. Please congratulate the last finalist and the opponent of Ryu Lion." The cheers rang out just as much as the squeals of the girls, who enjoyed seeing such a sweet and cute moment. "You have a lot to pay for, mister." "Don't worry, love, I'll accept any punishment you wish to give." "Mao, then carry me. I'm tired." And carry her he did. Like the princess she was, she held on tightly as he escorted her back to her familiar. Naughty Renard. Hee, blame Elise, she's the one who taught me that. When he arrived at the VIP stand, he was swarmed with mixed reactions. Loki gave him a thumbs up and praised him, while Arthur demanded to have a rematch. Elise, Kagaya, and Tsubaki laughed and approved, the redhead in particular appreciating how he learnt from her. Meanwhile, Musasha remained neutral, though admitting that was oddly bold of him. He did notice the pouting looks he got from Shinano and Ryu, but opted to leave them be. After all, he did have something else to worry about. Or more precisely, someone. "Now, that you are done until tomorrow, I believe me you owe me something, Belle." Belle nodded as Tsubaki grabbed Artoria and handed her to Elise before taking Belle's arm. "Wait, he needs to make it up to me." "Sorry, Artie, you can have your time tomorrow or the day after." Without letting anyone else have a chance to complain, she left with Belle. Hee, today I'll get my share of you, little Renard." "What now, Zoo?" Blushing slightly as she leaned against him in public, she began thinking about what to do. She wanted this to be a romantic day. Belle had all of tomorrow to prepare anyways, since the final match was scheduled to take place in the afternoon. "Let's start with getting you out of that armor with a trip to my place. Then we can have a date. We have all the way until tonight. We'll go tour the city, then have dinner, and then I'll be expecting to receive a nice reward for all my hard work." She smiled gently at Belle, who understood what she meant in an instant. "All right, then lead the way. Today I'm all yours." Hee, I was just waiting for you to say that." Taking his hand, she led him to her home, where they dropped off all the unnecessary equipment. Belle still kept the two flisses. You never knew when something dangerous could happen. Then off they went. The last destination was the same food district Kagaya had taken him to the first time they went out, but for now she would go to the shopping district of Orario, situated right next to the market where all traders and merchants came to sell their things. Tsubaki changed into a white blouse and a long black skirt. Her hair was fully let down, something she rarely if ever did. It just wasn't safe nor convenient to let her hair down, seeing as she was almost always in the forge. She also decided to leave behind her eye patch for the date, allowing Belle to see both her eyes for the first time. "You really are beautiful, Zhu." "Belle, you cheeky Renard." She gave his hand a squeeze, happily receiving the comment. The city had slowly gotten used to Belle and his girlfriends going on a date. That, however, did not mean they wouldn't receive many jealous stares. Tsubaki, though, used this opportunity to show the world that he was hers, well, and the other girls. "What do you want to do before dinner, Zhu?" "Oh, don't you worry. I planned this all out. After talking to Elise and Kagaya and hearing a few things from Estrella, I know exactly what to do for today." Belle couldn't help but feel a tinge of worry hearing that. Yep, he definitely had a bad feeling about this. It had Elise written all over it. He could see it come from a mile away. And something about the Smith's chirpy attitude told him that she was going to enjoy it very much. Come on, first destination is the mall. The mall was a large building that the guild had built and provided to make a place where hundreds of different shops would be concentrated for the people's enjoyment and convenience. When they arrived, Belle looked amazed at the structure. Just like the Colosseum and Babel, it was a magnificent architectural artwork. "Where are we going?" A special shop. I need to buy a few things and I need your opinion." To his dismay, however, he soon understood where she was taking them. Belle now awkwardly stood amongst a sea of women who were browsing for underwear and swimsuits. He felt a lot of stares, but none of the girls seemed uncomfortable. Rather, they welcomed the handsome man, but luckily Tsubaki made sure to stay close. I hope to get your recommendation, Belle." "Tizu, can't I wait outside?" "Nope." She smiled before sitting him down on the chair in front of the changing rooms. "I'll be trying out different underwear and a pair of swimsuits. I hope you enjoy." Belle grumbled as he stiffly waited for her return, not knowing where to look other than the ground. His hypersensitive ears were not helping as he could hear the rustling of various women's clothing. Then the curtain was shoved open and the Smith came out wearing a white frilly underwear. He had never really noticed until now, but Tsubaki's chest was truly enormous, more so than Kagaya and a little bit more than Elise, though Musasha and Shinano still held first position for that race. His face, though, heated up slightly as he saw her full form. "What do you think?" You look good." Seeing his reaction, she went back in and tried something different. This time she went for red lace underwear. His reaction this time was more embarrassed. She liked seeing his squirming face, but it was not what she was looking for. This time she went for a black one, which was more daring than the previous version. This time he gave her the most adorable reaction as he admitted she was gorgeous. However, unknown to him, this was for later tonight, and the reaction she was looking for wasn't embarrassment. Keeping the black color, she went with something that covered less and had a nightgown included in the set. When she came out, she made sure to tease him a little by striking a pose. This time she got what she really desired. He blushed, bright like a star, but he didn't look away. His eyes were completely captured and his whole undivided attention was on her. His posture, ears and tails straightened up and she could see him taking deep breaths in to calm himself. Now that is what she wanted. "You're the most amazingly alluring woman there is, Zhu." His tails brought her closer, enough for him to grab her hands in his own and pull her down a little for a gentle kiss. The raven-haired girl was ecstatic but loved how caring he was with his actions. "All right, time to move on to the swimsuits then." "Okay." Once again, she went in and showed him a variety of different swimsuits, getting a whole arsenal of different adorable reactions she'd die to see again. In the end, she had settled for a few but very different pairs of underwear, including the one that had gotten the best reaction out of him, followed by two swimsuits, one black, the other dark red. The red one was the one that had gotten the cutest squeal, while the black one was the sexiest one and the one that had amazed him the most. I hope we get to go to the beach in the future." "Me too." Holding hands, the two moved on to the next shop. This time it was jewelry with all kinds of beautiful accessories. Though Tsubaki was a skilled artisan herself, she specialized in weapons, not necklaces and rings. In search of a nice little accessory for herself, she had brought her lover to see what kind of little trinket would suit her in his opinion. No rings, by the way. Tsubaki tilted her head curiously, wondering why he singled out any kind of ring in particular. Why?" "Because. I can't tell you yet. But there is a special reason." "Suspicious, but I trust you have an amazing gift in mind, so I'll forego any rings." "Thank you, Zhu. Instead, I'll give you this." He leaned forwards and gave her a passionate, wet kiss that left her heavy with desire. almost making her contemplate if she should forget her plan and skip right to the end. Careful, Belle. You might awaken something in me at that rate. You can show me everything tonight, love. Oh, you make it so very hard to hold back. His attention then turned to a bracelet with a silver sword encased by a crimson flame. Picking it up, he couldn't help but smile. What do you think? It's cute. Do you think it fits me? Of course it does. Purchasing it, he used his tail to bring his smith close to him before clasping the bracelet around her right wrist. The black-haired woman stared into his eyes as he put the bracelet on before leaning her head onto his chest, quietly relaxing for the first time in a while. To be able to love and be loved like this at my age, I really am lucky I met Belle. Her arms wrapped around the Renard who, though had no idea what was going in Tsubaki's mind, he nonetheless obliged and returned the hug with all the love in his heart. Seeing as she was getting lost in the hug, he decided to have fun and use his ears to poke and tickle at her cheeks, eliciting a giggle out of her. Sorry, you're just so warm and comforting, I wanted to hug you for the rest of my life. I'll hug you in a better way later tonight, how about that? The mischievous glint in his eye made her heart flutter before she smiled. Don't let me down then. Make up for every night we've missed so far. Don't worry, Zoo, I'll make sure you can't walk. What's the matter, Hades? You've been staring at the sky ever since you got back. Alice laid her golden sword on the stand by her bed while looking at her best friend who sat on a chair by the window. The cream-silver-haired woman leaned with her arms on the small table that they shared in the inn-room. Her face rested on her hands as she stared at the moon. Her mind kept playing the fight he had seen at the tournament. The question posed by Alice only barely registered, causing her to turn her red eyes to the blonde knights. I was thinking about Belle. She nonchalantly answered before a mischievous grin made its way on her face, knowing of Alice's ever-enjoyable reactions and how easily she got flustered. You think he'll agree to marry me if I ask him? Just as she had expected, the girl snapped around with a shocked and blushing face. What? Are you seriously thinking that? Marriage? Hee, you're so adorable, Alice. Come here, cutie. Hades got up and tackled her, hugging her while looping her arms around her, one over her shoulder and one under from the opposite side. Her face affectionately nuzzled her friends, all the while she kept enjoying the cute reactions that the blonde knight rewarded her with. Stop it, you. Enough with your jokes. Synthesis 30 then pouted, though it backfired, as her fellow knight simply found it amusing and cute to watch. Luckily for her, she decided that she had her fair share of fun and stopped teasing her. All right. I was just impressed by his strength. I kinda want to try fighting him. That was something that caught Alice's attention. She too was curious about his strength, and as a knight she'd be lying if she denied that she had a desire to test herself against him. But the difference in level made her somewhat doubtful as to whether or not he'd be able to keep up with her, even if she had seen firsthand how he could overcome the level barriers. Hades, on the other hand, cared less for such minor details, instead excitedly planning on asking for a duel tomorrow. All the while not telling a single word of her future plans to Alice, of course. She knew she'd raise hell if she were to discover her intentions. You know, I was really surprised by both him and Princess Artoria when they unleashed their unknown powers. Artoria's was really cool, but more shocking than that was Belle's invulnerability to magic. That barrage from the princess should have left even a level 6 crippled, but he took it without receiving even a scratch. And then there was his fight with Tanjiro. That was a super cool show, and of course we can't forget that ultra-powerful spell that beamed through the sky. Man, was that a blast. Alice nodded, remembering the scenes vividly in her mind, all the while ignoring the pun. She had to admit that she was curious about his race, never having seen a nine-tailed fox before. Not only that, but she had long heard of the famed breath techniques used by the Far Eastern warriors, one of whom was level 7 and rivaled their own captain. Say, Alice, who do you think will win tomorrow? The elf is strong, very strong. She has an impressive fighting spirit and a natural talent with the sword, but she is a magic swordswoman. Considering that her power relies in her magic, I am pretty sure that she will lose. Against someone who is almost immune to magic attacks, I don't think she has a chance. Belle is also very skilled, and unlike her, he will be able to use his magic to full potential. Besides having many hidden trump cards, there is no chance of Belle getting defeated. Hey, what's this? Our little Alice has a crush on someone. What? Hades. Enough of that nonsense. I'm not into the Renard. I simply find him a little attractive, that's all. Besides, I just stated things as they were. Yeah, that's what crush means. Anyways, I guess you're right, but we'll see tomorrow. Who knows what fate we might end up witnessing. Ryu stood before the imposing wooden door that separated her from the arena, nervously fiddling with her fingers. She couldn't help but wonder if she could win. She did after all plan to confess after winning. Though she knew deep inside that whether she won or not, Bell would have either accepted her as his girlfriend or proposed to her himself. But what she wanted was what came after winning, since the winner would get a wish granted by the other party and she really wanted to fluff his tail. Welcome Ryu Lion of Astrea Familia and Bell Katsuki of Takemikazuchi Familia. She could hear the cheers throughout the Colosseum as the door opened and light invaded the dark room in which she was standing. With a deep breath she began walking forwards, making her way onto the vast dusty stage that had been prepared for them. Pillars and other simple structures such as walls had been repaired from the last fight after Artoria had bombarded them with magic. Her mind rushed to come up with as many stratagems to let her defeat the Renard, but she found herself unable to come up with anything concrete. With a shake of her head, she focused back on the match. It was not the time for her to get distracted or she would lose in a heartbeat, a thing which she knew very well having sparred countless times with him. You can do it, Ryu. Come on. She unsheathed her weapon and walked to the center to face Bell. The Renard wore his usual smile as he stood before her. That damned smile made it awfully hard to concentrate for Ryu. It was infuriating how adorable it was and the way it made all warm in her heart. It really put her off, but she once again steeled her nerves and waited for Ivory to announce the start of the match. Say, Ryu, you remember the deal, right? Of course, the winner gets a wish granted by the loser. Will you keep the promise? Of course I would. Then can I ask anything? The elf blushed but responded soon after. As long as it's not too lewd. Hee, thanks Ryu. But I warn you now, there is no way I will let you win knowing that. There is something I really want to try after all. Same goes for me, Bell. Ivory then grabbed his MIC, the two tightening their grips on their weapons as they anticipated the start of the match. As always, Ivory gave a short speech before finally getting to the part everyone had been waiting for. The signal. Begin. The two immediately rushed forwards, their swords rapidly clashed, swinging their swords fluently and precisely. Ryu gripped her sword with both hands as she deflected the heavy blows of her love interest. As she had expected, his superior status was as outrageous as always. She knew she would only lose if she tried to go at him and make it a contest of skill or status. Instead, she tried using her famous Luminous Wind spell, though as everyone had predicted, the tails had provided an impenetrable defense against her magic. How unfair. Unlike Artoria, the blonde elf possessed neither the strength nor the endurance to keep with the white Renard. What she did have, on the other hand, was the combined prowess of all her familiar members. As she watched the blue glow of Bell's spell appear, she too relied on her new spell, which materialized a dome of hieroglyphs that protected her from the deadly snowflake. She then proceeded to make use of Elise's well-known strength. Her body was clad in green embers, and with increased speed and strength she slashed horizontally. Bell's reaction speed was as fast as ever, and leaning back he dodged it by a hair's breadth. He then proceeded to show off his acrobatic skills, reaction time, and insane speed, dodging the fire-enhanced wooden blade. 24 attacks, and Ryu was shocked to see each one miss by a small margin. She was impressed how far he had improved in a few days, as he now resorted to minimal movement whilst perfectly reading her attacks. He's really amazing. Knowing she'd have to push herself harder, she borrowed her other companion's spells. Without faltering, she dashed forward, striking horizontally, then diagonally twice before attempting an overhead strike that was easily blocked by Bell. It had always surprised everyone how quickly he could learn and adapt to the situation. No matter how rapid, precise, and vicious her attacks were, his ability to dodge and parry her attacks had made him invulnerable to her every attempt to defeat him. All the while Elise's spell was still active, the green embers around her body being proof of that. However, she was going to push her limits to the brink for this fight. As long as she had the mana, she could keep using the spells of her companions, as the effect of her unique spell were continuously in effect. Bell was surprised when two attacks flew towards him in tandem, one being Ryu's, the other being a blade of light. With his superior speed he countered the spell before blocking the wooden sword. Overpowering her, she skidded back before performing Kagaya's famous quick draw. However, this time 5 golden blades shot forwards along the physical sword. With a wide horizontal arc he slashed through all the blades before reverse gripping his crimson sword and using the flat of the blade to block her attack. To his surprise, however, as he put his back foot down, the area around it glowed brightly before detonating. Grunting, he flew into the sky from the explosion. During that, he spotted Ryu using Mariu's spell to heal herself and recover before showering him with the combined prowess of Ryanna's, Nee's, Keltis, and Elise's spells. The torrent of fire, lightning, and bar led towards him, forcing him to wrap himself with his tails to nullify the devastating attack. Landing with a soft and bouncy thump, he looked around to see that Ryu was gone. It was his sensitive ears that saved his skin as he heard the noise of footsteps just in time to evade a pair of magic fists by the elf. The missed opportunity had left her side exposed, which Belle took advantage of, delivering a powerful kick. The damage, however, never reached Ryu as a magic defense protected her before suddenly speeding up. The combined effect of Agaris Alvacinth and Noin's magic proved to be a challenge even for his broken status. Belle groaned as he struggled to keep up with the hundreds of slashes that Ryu barraged him with. Angling his blade, he barely the 3 horizontal attacks, then a diagonal, then another horizontal before a vertical downward slash. The pattern came irregularly, not leaving Belle the chance to counterattack, yet at the same time not being enough to push him back. The Renard was shocked by the improvement she had shown, particularly in her magic, as her capacity and strength likely matched a level 6 mage as of right now. In the face of the constant flux of attacks, he relied on his sword to block the attacks, waiting for an opportunity. As she took an obviously wide swing, Belle doubted whether to try and gain the upper hand, but decided to try nonetheless. As he had expected, though, it turned out to be a trap. His upward swing missed as she stepped back, leaving his head open to her attack. Ryu then thrust the sword forwards. Luckily, he had the advantage of having tail, which he used to swat away the attack. That too, though, was what Ryu had wanted, and used the moment to kick and slash his fluffy limb out of the way. He was left flabbergasted when he saw that Ryu had prepared Luminous Wind. He was at point-blank range, and he had no defenses this time. He had no time to chant his shield either, the situation suddenly looking grim. It was Ryu's final plan to take him down, one which had taken him by surprise, not having heard a whisper of her chant. But it was then that he realized that Estrella record applies even to her own spells. What he wasn't aware of at that time was that Ryu didn't actually know with certainty if it would have actually worked, instead having decided to gamble on it, leaving fate to decide on the outcome. Luvia. The crowd cheered and shouted in excitement as the arena was filled with dust and smoke. They waited with bated breath to see if the final attack had successfully defeated the Renard. To everyone's surprise, however, Ryu came flying out of the smoke screen, hitting the edge at max speed. That came as a result of a kick that had painfully struck her in the chest. Walking out calmly with a smoking burn mark on the chest piece of his armor was Belle. It just barely left a few marks, but he was otherwise unscathed. Cheers rang out across the arena as the battle resumed, with her exhausted Ryu trying her hardest to resist the incoming attacks, rolling out of the way of an upward slash that ravaged the ground she had been standing on. How can that be? He took Lion's attack head-on. The members of the Estrella Familia were surprised by the result. Even Elise had to admit she was surprised. Belle was strong but not invincible. To take a hit from Luminous Wind was something even she wouldn't be able to, at least not unscathed. Then, laughing proudly, Tsubaki revealed the reason. Hee, that's my handiwork after all. A gift to protect our Renard. So the armor is the reason. The goddess of justice sought for a clearer answer. Deep down she cheered for both, but to see how her child was unable to land a serious hit was a little disheartening. Yes, well, Belle would have been able to tank the damage, but he would have been hurt regardless. Unlike Ryu's prediction that wouldn't have brought him down, it would have, however, weakened him and gave her a fighting chance in CQC. But that doesn't matter, cause it was all thwarted by my equipment. The goal of armor is to protect, so it should do this much. Man, what kinda did you give him? Elise was really curious. Luckily for her, Hephaestus then clarified. An armor that matches the divine weapon and is on par in quality. An equipment set that goes above and beyond first class. It's something even I haven't made. I made plenty of divine weapons in heaven with divine materials. Never have I made a full set of armor with regular materials that could be put on the same level of quality as its weapon counterpart. Hearing the extent of Tsubaki's achievement drew the attention the gods and adventurers around her. Hephaestus was a proud smith, and to hear her talk so highly about someone to the point where she admitted that she had in a way surpassed her was something that left shock imprinted on many faces. It's the first time someone impressed me, much less surpassed my creations. What I find even more amusing and impressive, though, is the reason behind her passion. Love. How cute. Geez, you're gonna tease me now. I will later, Tsubaki. Really? Sorry, Ryu, but Tsubaki saved me from that one. Ryu mentally cursed her future wife as she had just made her lose any chance she had to defeat him. I believe we should bring this to an end. Ryu immediately snapped her attention back to Belle, who had both hands on the hilt of his sword, the tip and weight resting on the ground. She found it confusing that he made no attempt to attack her, but soon enough she realized why. Order has fallen, and with it has justice. The lands are now wrought with rampant malice. Too long has it gone the suffering of the innocent, for I have been naively munificent. The sword spun around and aimed at the sky as he began chanting. The more he understood his spell and the more he mastered it, the stronger and more control he gained over it. A bright yet extremely complex magic circle formed under his feet. The sheer size and beautiful complex nature of the magic circle had even Riveria on her feet in shock. Arise, harbinger of destruction, cleanse the world of this obstruction. Put an end to the incarnates of war, for their life they abhor. His 9 tails extended outwards like rays from a sun, each glowing as mana gathered. Like a funnel, the particles of magic were sucked into his body from the back. Riveria watched as a myriad of colored particles all formed a tornado that sprouted from around Bell as magic powered his spell. My love for this world has long ago waned, thou existence is this realm's bane. It is mine duty as the guardian of order to AC, divine retribution is what mine decisions enact. Ryu slashed and thrust her sword, but Bell only focused on defending, never taking advantage of an opening, as all he had to do was hold out until his spell was complete. I feel not the pain as mine actions this world it destroy, the countless eons have left me of my emotions devoid. By mine will have I now chosen to mend, the arrogation of mankind now comes to an end. Feeling the danger of the spell, she took a step back, to her confusion the tails wrapped around the blade. They then began pulsing before unleashing the deadly ray as Bell called out the name of his ultimate attack. The energy, instead of detonating in a massive explosion, was infused over to the sword with a visible shockwave. The previously crimson blade now emanated a powerful white and blue glow. The amount of magic compressed into it caused the sword to steam with mana. She prepared for the attack, watching his every move as he dashed and approached her. She knew she couldn't block nor parry the attack. The dodge, however, never came as he once again deviated from expectations, and rather than attacking he burrowed the sword into the ground, sinking it into the depths of the earth. The cracked land shone with blue light and detonated. Oh no! Finn was prepared for a catastrophic disaster, with the entirety of Orario having witnessed how destructive his spell could be. Luckily, as he had seen on many cases before, Bell was more careful and aware of that. He also knew that he wouldn't do anything to hurt or even endanger his girlfriends. Woo! I thought we were all going to die. Ha ha ha. Tiona was far too excited about the close call, with Tyon soon silencing her with her fist. The others, however, were more focused on the results of the battle. There was a moment of silence before Ryu darted out of the smoke, except this time she wasn't flying from a hit. Her body was visibly exhausted and injured, with bruises and cuts that covered her from head to toe. Bell soon followed at twice the speed. Her eyes widened as he had jumped up, flying down with a spin towards her like an arrow. She spun around and raised her sword before being pushed down into the ground. Although Ryu put up a brave resistance, the result was clear to anyone. The moment the battlefield cleared, Ryu was on the ground, the crimson sword, much to Bell's inner panic and worry, an inch from her left ear. Woo! What a final battle! Truly worthy of the finals. Witness in all his glory, the champion, Bell Katsuki of Takamikazuchi Familia. Ibree was ecstatic as he announced the results that finally brought a conclusion to the tournament. Bell in the meantime offered his hand to Ryu, which she took with a rare smile. Up in the stands, Alexander pouted as it was clear as day as to who the elf was in love with. Great job, Ryu. You say that, but it was my complete defeat. You still tried your hardest. You can only grow stronger from here. Caressing his hand, she felt her heart rate skyrocket. You're right. I will catch up with you one day. They were about to leave when someone stopped them. Stop right there. In her glinting silver armor, the level 6 knight known as Hades pointed her finger towards Bell. She held the same positive energy as Tiona while sporting a constant bright smile that was second only to Bell's. I challenge you to a duel. I saw the fight and it was super exciting. So I decided I want to fight you too. There was obvious confusion amongst the audience, and up in the stands many members of her familiar face palmed as the troublesome child went ahead and made a mess as usual. Alice, as her best friend, was quick to jump down and grab her arm, trying to stop her and drag her away. Hades, have you gone crazy? Stop this right now. Why not? Elise landed next to Bell, quickly hugging both him and the elf, who blushed at the physical contact but didn't push neither of the people away. What? Elise, you're not serious, are you? The redhead kissed him on the cheek, having missed the feeling before nodding. Of course I'm serious. She is interested in you and I in Hades-chan and Alice-chan. Me? Yep, so how about this? Let's have a tag team battle. Me and Bell against you and Hades Chan. Wait, but Bell is level 5. I know he's strong, but getting caught amidst a battle between 3 level 6 dash. It's fine. Bell is ready for that. Alright, now you're talking. See Alice. It's fine. Then tonight at midnight. Midnight. That's right, you want to fight Bell at his strongest, no? Then midnight it is. Elise was well aware of how Bell's skill worked, and tonight was the night where the full moon bloomed in its full beauty and would empower the Renard to its full potential. Throughout this all, Bell had no say, instead having to stare with a shocked look as he was suffocated in her cleavage. So the impromptu battle was scheduled, much to the despair of both Baphomet and Astrea, as they watched their children just randomly decide whatever they felt like. Hey, it's going to be an interesting fight at least. Bokuli's word of encouragement did little to alleviate the two goddesses. They would let it slide for now, but promised to give them a piece of their mind later. As for Royman, he didn't really care because it brought in more money while the work was given to his subordinates, which really just meant free compensation for him. Bell once again stood in the arena, the moon high above him shining white rays of light down on him. Despite the late period of night and the sudden announcement of the match, there were just as many spectators as before. Then again, it wasn't every day you got to watch level 6 adventurers fight. Wearing the same armor and wielding Tsubaki's creation, he walked towards the center with Elise by his side. Opposite to them stood Alice and Hades, both in their full-plate knight armor, one golden, the other silver. The blonde knight carried her golden sword, a weapon that it too was a pseudo-divine weapon, as was Hades' raven blade. Mao. Elise pouted as she saw she was the only one with a regular weapon. Of course, hers was a first-class weapon, but the chance to wield a divine weapon was something that the Phoenix dreamt of. Perhaps she could ask Tsubaki about it. Opposite to them, Hades seemed downright ecstatic and looked like she could barely hold herself back from swinging her sword. Alright, Bell, do your thing. Right. Hades, like Alice and the rest of the audience, watched Bell with bated breath. Just as if on cue, the dark cloudy sky cleared. The bright blue moon shone down on the arena, the light gracefully enveloping Bell. His tails unfurled and the moons appeared as his skill activated. This time, however, was in the presence of the full moon. His tails, ears, and hair grew thick and fluffy, while the red tips of his tails turned blue. His rubellite eyes became a dark sapphire, and a symbol made of light that represented the moon formed on his forehead. The star-shaped pupil glowed brightly as a blue and white aura clad his body. Even his crimson sword was now white and blue, as if to match his transformation. Wait, what? Even Takumi Kazuchi was surprised by the sudden change in appearance. Finn and the other executives all watched with great interest, wishing to see how much more powerful he would get with his skill being at full potential. Wow. Hee, you're so pretty. Mao. Elise, not now. Returning her attention to the two in front of them, she unsheathed her weapon, ready to start. All right, now we're ready. Ibri, whenever you want. Ibri was momentarily taken by Bell, but then nodded, and with renewed vigor he announced the start. Every familiar that had participated in the tournament was there, along with Fina, Rai, and the Iris familiar, with the girls wanting to see Bell's match against the members of the Baphomet familia. Begin. Bell aimed right for Hades, moving faster than lightning. He was on the Silver Knight in an instant. Surprised by how fast he was, she only had time to block the attack, but the level 7 power sent her blade rebounding up above her head. A second hit had her off her feet, and a third sent her flying to the wall of the arena. Goo! What the heck? Alice looked absolutely aghast from the sudden attack, but had no time to ponder over Bell's strength, as Elise was right behind her. I know he is charming, but you should keep your eyes on the beautiful Elise. Alice blocked the overhead blow before intercepting the second strike and parrying it. The captain of the Astrea familia, however, was quick to unleash a barrage of attacks that rapidly overwhelmed her. Sparks flew into the sky as their swords scraped against each other. The red-haired adventurer continued, slashing incessantly with precise moves. Alice hadn't expected the adventurer to be so skilled, believing to be more accustomed to monsters than people, but that belief of hers ended up biting her back, as she found herself on a decaying defense. Hades, in the meantime, wasn't faring better. She just dove to the side as Bell crashed into the wall. The mere increase in both strength and speed had her shocked, as she could already see him match Kirito and Berkuli in terms of raw power. She tried counterattacking, but the speed behind his blows forced her to defend, leaving her no chance to attack him. This is so exciting. It's the first time I felt like this. Yet despite the entire situation, Hades was super giddy with the fight. The thrill of battle was something she enjoyed, particularly against a strong opponent. I'm also enjoying this, but I hope you can show me more of your power, Edia-san. Of course. Pushing her body forwards, responded with more vigor. It was then that Belle noticed that the knight seemed stronger than before, and the more the battle dragged on, the more and more powerful she got. It took a few more hits, but Belle was sure of it. A skill that powered up the user the more damage her body received. It wasn't enough to cover the difference in status, but in terms of skill they were even, and in terms of experience Hades was far more experienced. In the end they found themselves in a stalemate. Not bad, Belle, but you won't defeat me like that. As expected of a knight of the Baphomet familiar. Behind them Alice grit her teeth as she found herself struggling. Elise seeing this slashed twice before using the slight gap in her guard to kick her shin and following it with a knee to her stomach. Hee, you're good, Alice-chan. To think you were this strong. Well, I can't look bad in front of Belle, can I now? But this is only the start. Will you be able to keep up with the fantastic Elise? As she shouted that, she dashed forwards. Aga, Arvana, Arvelia, Agaris Alvacinth. Her body burst into crimson flames just before she closed in on her, spell which Alice had seen when Ryu used it, but compared to the level the elf had shown, this was in a league of its own. Combined with her skills Ubrud Bequia and Batleet Asarath, her battle prowess reached levels that only the top adventurers could dream of matching. System call. Unleash your memories and cease the enemy's advance. Release recollection. In response she brought about her own ace, the secret technique of her familiar's knights. The knight's sword glowed gold before transforming into a storm of golden flakes of flower petals. They whirled around before aiming right for Elise. As usual of the confident captain, she smirked before generating an explosion to fend off the sharp flakes. Flying around like a dart of fire, she evaded the storm before striking Alice. The heavy blows had her stumbling and on the defense. Ooh! Alice watched as she zigzagged right between her flowers and approached her. Seeing her coming, she tried to get her with vertical strike, but was parried before feeling the sole of her foot slamming her body back, painfully leaving a bruise on her stomach. Ka! Skidding to a stop, she immediately slashed horizontally as she sensed her opponent close in on her. Elise, though, was swift and leaned back, dodging as the blade just avoided her chest plate. With a grin, the defender of justice dodged another horizontal slash before blocking her sword as she came back for a third. Empowered by her skills, she pushed back the integrity knight. Wow! Ryu was mesmerized by the image of her captain fighting. She had been in the familiar for over 8 years, but she had never seen her fight with all her power. Was Elise always that strong? Astrea couldn't help but giggle at the awe-inspired face that the elf was wearing. Fufu, dear Ryu, you shouldn't doubt Elise. She isn't the captain for nothing. Yes, she is charismatic, which is a quality a leader needs, and yes, she is a believer of justice as well as my first child, but her strength plays a great role in it as well. Heh, useless elf, don't you know? Kagaya smirked at her, though this time Ryu didn't get mad at the name, too confused by what she meant. Hey! True, Elise is a handful, and she might be annoying when she flaunts her strength and beauty, but despite all the whining and playfulness, she is an incredibly strong warrior. You shouldn't underestimate her. You might not know it, but she is by far the strongest amongst the level 6s in all of Gakkai. And honestly, calling her the phoenix of the Astrea familiar is ironic. Why so? Because phoenixes are reborn from death. They grow stronger from their defeat. Except Elise has never lost before. She still holds the title of undefeated. What? Yep, she never lost, not even to Otter. Are you saying Elise won against him? No, but they have fought. 3 times. Twice in a duel and once in the dungeon due to a misunderstanding. Yet not once was she defeated. Yes, she didn't win, but she managed to draw all 3 times against Orario's strongest. She didn't win, but she didn't lose either, thus remaining undefeated. No one that has ever crossed swords with her has ever won, not even when she was a newbie. And that's because besides her status and skills, she has a tenacity that even the gods fear. Ryu was fascinated by the story she had never heard of before, never imagining that the lovable idiot that was her captain was someone so powerful. Astrea put her hand on her head and gently stroked it as she resumed, her eyes proudly watching her captain. And now that she has Belle supporting her, she will only grow stronger and stronger. Her passion and desire for Belle will only fuel her already unbreakable tenacity. You'll have to work harder if you want to catch up to her, Ryu. Alice tried pushing forwards to break through her guard, but just then Elise jumped up and the knight was shocked to see a large white and blue blade sailing towards her. Using his tail, he grabbed Hades and tossed her towards her companion, pushing both in the same area, while his lover landed right next to him. Alright, Belle, it's time. Let's show them our super duper cool killer final move. Can't you just call it our combo move or something? No way. That isn't cool at all, you know. Ha, fine, fine. Like a phoenix, Elise sped up until she became a blur and eventually took flight, turning herself into a ball of fire. Belle, on the other hand, dove into the ground, surprising people when he turned into mist instead of smacking his face in the ground. Then he shot up into the sky in the form of a sphere of ice. The red and white spheres began rapidly flying around before attacking either Alice or Hades. Like birds hunting a mice, the two darted around, striking and smacking the two knights who could do little as they were too fast to hit. They kept going back and forth until their bodies were exhausted and their armor chipped. Then the attacks stopped. Both Hades and Alice watched in confusion as the two spheres returned to the sky. Like they were holding hands, wisps of red and blue mana entangled themselves. As they joined and begun rapidly spinning in place, the red and blue started mixing together. Finally, the two stars stopped growing brighter, signaling the end of the charging phase before plummeting down to Earth like comets. Oh no! Hades immediately had Alice deploy her flowers to try and shield them, but it wasn't enough. As the two crashed into the ground, a massive explosion of blue and red enveloped the arena. When the mist cleared, half the battlefield was covered in freezing ice while the other was melted into scorching magma. Amidst the destruction, at the center of the arena stood both Belle and Elise. The red-haired girl was proudly looking at their handiwork while Belle awkwardly laughed at her reaction. Ooh! Hades and Alice were covered with frost and burns, struggling to get on their feet as their feet had went numb from the rapid change in temperature. Refusing to give up, Hades was the first to get up. Charging forwards with her black sword, she took a swing at Belle but was intercepted by Elise. Back to back with his lover, Belle stopped the blonde knight while Elise kept platinum-haired girl at bay. With the teamwork both parties had developed, neither could get the advantage, as the moment Elise's guard slipped, Belle's tail would smack the blade out the way, while when Hades was caught off guard, Alice would use her petals to defend her. Let's split them up. I'll leave Alice in your hands, Belle. All right. With a wide arc, he pushed his opponent back, separating Alice from her companion. I'm impressed, Belle-san. I never expected you to be so strong. I apologize for underestimating you before. Not at all. If anything, it's an honor to be able to duel against you. I've always admired knights, and to be able to see one in person is such a dream come true. The smile he showed her was infectious, as she too couldn't help but reciprocate. Allow me to show you our familiar's strength. She swung vertically, to which Belle responded by raising his sword horizontally and blocking it. To her surprise, her blade rebounded, the raw power behind his stance having overpowered. Belle didn't budge despite the weight of her attack and immediately countered with a diagonal slash from bottom right to top left. With a stomp on the ground, she regained her balance and slashed downwards, blocking the incoming attack. Alice grunted as she strained her muscles to push back against Belle with everything she had. Taking a step to his right, he pushed her blade past him before cutting across diagonally once again. Thanks to her trained reaction time, the knight had just enough time to lean back and avoid a decapitation. Alice responded then with a shoulder tackle, which Belle copied, forcing the girl to take a step back. Alice recovered and moved first with a horizontal slash. Seeing it coming, he parried the strike before rapidly exchanging a flurry of blows which sent sparks flying. The audience watched as thousands of arcs clashed as the two darted across their half of the arena. The Renard dashed forwards and slashed at Alice, who deflected it. Upon landing, he pivoted and followed it with a parry before swatting a thrust of her sword out of the way. Once again, Alice called upon her magic petals, which Belle easily repelled. Seeing as it wasn't working, she chanted her other spell, hoping to catch him by surprise with it. Enhance armament. However, in the heat of the moment, the knight had completely forgotten the Renard's invulnerability to magic. As a large flower bloomed and shot a beam of energy at Belle, his tail's tamamo balled around his body, completely negating the magic attack. My turn now. Jumping up, his tail spread behind him, like a peacock showing off its feathers. Glowing blue from his spell and white from the light of the moon that graced his image from behind, the majestic sight was completely imprinted into Alice. There was a beauty to the scene that completely captured the blonde girl. Reflecting in her eyes, she only saw him in all his glory, every other function ceasing to work. Her sword lowered and her grip slackened as his red eyes gleaming in the night worked their charms on her as she felt her soul get captivated by them. Frozen in the moment, she didn't react nor see the dangerous snowflake racing towards her. How beautiful! What? Alice! The various knights noticed how she refused to budge nor defend herself. Worried that she'd end up getting hurt, they all shouted at her, knowing that they wouldn't be able to reach her even if they rushed with all of their strength. Kirito, Berkuli, and Quinella were particularly shocked by the situation given they knew how strong she was. Yu-Gi-Oh shouted out her name, feeling his heart thunder as she faced what was possibly her impending doom. Alice. Ha! Bell noticed the immobile Alice and realized the danger she was in. As a hero, he couldn't sit still when people were in danger, more so when it was his doing. Of course, Alice being a girl also played as a factor in his determination to save her, but that is a fact that needn't be mentioned. He took off in a sprint the moment he landed. Overtaking his approaching spell, he launched himself onto Alice, pushing her to the ground while his tails wrapped around them. Alice. The spell landed a bit short of the two, but had it not been for his tails, the knight would have found herself critically injured. As Bell looked down, he immediately made sure to check if she was okay. Though unresponsive to his calls, he was glad to see that she was fine, only in a trance which she snapped out of as he got off her. I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me. It's okay. As long you're fine, then that's all that matters. Seeing his bright smile sent a jolt through her heart, all the while a blush slowly creeped up her face. Thank you, Belle. No problem. Now let's continue. I can't accept this as your defeat. This is a duel, not a fight to the death after all. She had been ready to admit defeat but was surprised by his declaration, to which she smiled. Seeing the outstretched hand, she gratefully took it before gripping her sword, ready to start another bout. Standing face to face, they resumed the match, only for Bell to catch a blur of red with the tail of his eye. He already knew what that meant, so to his opponent's confusion he turned away and aimed for Hades. Heya! Alice soon figured out why Bell had turned away as Elise punched her in the side, sending her flying. Got to be careful, Alice-chan. If you're not, you will end up getting killed on the battlefield. Ooh. Almost instinctively her eyes found the Renard's back, which was engaging a giddy and excited Hades. Elise, the ever-attentive girl she was, as well as always being on the lookout for new members to add to the polyamory, immediately noticed her eyes wandering over her lover. Oh, Alice-chan, aiming for my boyfriend are we? What? No, of course not. She could see the teasing smirk and the smugness in her eyes, reminding almost a little too much of Hades. Hee, you're so obvious. How cute. Yumu. Her captain could see when something caught her deity's attention. Baphomet-sama, what's the matter? The horned goddess turned to Quinella, then to Yu-Gi-Oh. She almost felt bad for the blue-eyed knight in training. Careful, Yu-Gi-Oh, it looks to me like little Alice is crushing on Belkuan. Hey, what are you talking about, Kamisama? It's not like that. Besides, I doubt Alice would ever show any interest in anyone. I'm serious, Yu-Gi-Oh. I don't know how or why, but something about Bell must have caught her attention amidst the battle and attracted her to him. Hearing that, Yu-Gi-Oh got lost in thought, wondering what to do and dreading if what his goddess said was true. All the while, she looked at him with pity, but she felt it was better to tell him so he wouldn't be overwhelmed later. Was it necessary? It was Quinella. I feel bad for him, but love is a mysterious and fickle thing. Poor Belkuan as well. He's about to catch some strays from both Yu-Gi-Oh and Eldri. That he is. Hades slashed downwards, slamming her blade onto the blue sword that thwarted her victory. Following that with a slash from the left, his sword was raised vertically to block before counterattacking with a diagonal slash that pushed her back, allowing Bell the time and space to spin and gain momentum for a heavier attack. Seeing the large blade arrive, Hades took a few steps back as the ground beneath her was crushed. Lowering her stance, she thrust her sword like a spear, which Bell deflected by raising his sword at eye level. With a grunt, he blocked another stroke, which locked the two, neither giving ground. With her skill-enhanced strength, Hades managed to match the Renard's strength that had both unable to gain an advantage over the other. Despite it all, the knight smiled, feeling her blood boil with joy and excitement from this. The thrill he brought to her made her heart race, and she knew in that moment that she was falling in love with him. Behind them, Alice had been already defeated, leaving Hades the sole member of the Baphomet familia still fighting. Elise, however, refused to team up and attack her, deciding to let Bell challenge her on his own. It was good for both, making Bell stronger and form a stronger bond between the two. As usual of the ever-intuitive Elise, she already knew that Hades liked the white-haired adventurer and opted to let him work his charm on her. Back to the fight, the two were constantly swinging their blades, which crashed into a flurry of sparks that was enough to make it look like there was a fireworks show going on. By now, the prolonged fight had worn both members down, their armor and skin blemished by all the dirt and dust being kicked around. Yet for all the blunt hits the two had taken, the only one with clear injuries was Hades, with a bruise on her left forearm, exposed after a heavy downward swing had shattered her vambrace, a shattered rib from a wide arc of his tail and a light cut across her cheek, the which blood now dripped down Belle's sword, staining the white and blue blade with its dark red color. With a smile she kept attacking, even if she never gained an inch. Hades struck horizontally twice, then vertical from down to up, followed by a diagonal slash, all of which were blocked by his iron defense, never letting any get past his guard. Belle retaliated with another swing, aiming to cut across her chest from waist to shoulder, but he wasn't surprised when she swung her blade from beneath, knocking his sword above her head, followed with a roundhouse kick to his wrist. "You should be more careful, Belle." As the foot made contact, the Renard couldn't keep his grip on his weapon, and it went flying away. Disarmed, he now stood before the girl, who looked ready to have the time of her life. Wait, isn't this a little unfair? There are no rules on the battlefield, Belle. Belle dodged a slash to his neck, another to his chest, then another horizontal that tried to sweep his leg. Seeing her take a wide overhead swing, he crossed his arms and blocked the long edge of her sword, only manageable thanks to the high-quality armor Tsubaki had made. Using the technique learnt from Takemikazuchi, he then pushed her weapon away before grabbing her wrists and disarm her. Not bad, but this isn't over. Hades launched punch that grazed his cheek before going for hit from below, then a right hook aimed for his head. Dodging the first and blocking the second, he pivoted and threw her over his shoulder, slamming her into the ground. Hades barely had the time to roll out of the way as Belle stomped onto the ground, forming a crater with his enhanced strength. As soon as she got up, however, she was grabbed by his tails, completely immobilizing. Hey, this is cheating. But there are no rules in battle. To think you would use my own words against me. Gah. As soon as she finished, she was slammed into the ground again and again and again. With his first-class strength, he launched her into the sky. As she came down, she was instantly met with a punch to her stomach before a kick slammed her into the ground. In a last-ditch attempt to get back at the adventurer, she swept his leg, only to be thwarted as he stomped down on her leg while his other hand grabbed her neck, effectively putting an end to the match. Hades stared at him seriously before cutely pouting. "Mao, I wanted to fight longer." Well, this is my defeat this time." With a giggle, Hades surrendered, marking the end of the match. Cheers filled the Colosseum while Belle helped Hades to her feet, soon joined by Elise and Alice. "Ladies and gents, Astrea and Takemikazuchi Familia win. Today's champions are our dear adventurers, the undefeatable Phoenix and the rising star of Orario." Taking a break, chapter notes. By the way, next chapter 1 will start truly incorporating the Iris Familia. If you have any particular Asia Lane character you want to include, then drop it as a comment, and I will try to include it unless there are too many. The 4 warriors returned to the stands where their familiars waited to congratulate them on the amazing fight they had displayed. Goes without saying that Belle got assaulted by his girlfriends the moment he got back. Of course, Artoria only restrained herself to a chaste kiss on the cheek, unlike the others who stuck to him and snuggled him. Elise too glumped him, seeing as everyone else was doing it, the group getting interrupted only as Baphomet came with the rest of her familia, including Alice and Hades. "Good job, Belkuin. You too, Elise. You were really impressive out there." "Thank you, Metasama." Still with that, The Renard couldn't help but shy away from the accusatory pout of the goddess. "Man, that was awesome." Kirito and the others also congratulated the duo for their battle, with some poking fun at Hades for losing, which earned a few slaps from the platinum-haired girl. Alice walked up to him and extended her hand to congratulate him since she hadn't had the chance. Belle took and shook her hand, grateful for the chance to fight against a level 6 as well as to be able to duel against a knight. "Slow down with the praises now, Belkuin. You trying to flirt with her?" "What? Kamisama, please don't joke about that. Belle wasn't flirting with me." The flustered blonde girl shouted at her goddess, yet everyone noticed how she was unusually embarrassed about it. Seeing that, 2 people felt oddly uncomfortable with the situation, realizing that maybe she did like the Renard. "Well, you will have your chances at the ball. So Belkuin, what are your plans for the next 2 days?" "Oh, well, I was going to spend a day with the girls, while the other one I was going to go back to the hostess to help out. I work there, but I haven't really been doing my job since the expedition started after all." "I see. That's fair enough. Then I guess we'll come by the hostess in 2 days. See you then." As usual, Belle was kidnapped by the Astrea Familia, along with Belle's girlfriends joining in. To his surprise, however, Rose was tagging along as well. He was curious as to why that was, but opted to simply not ask, instead enjoying the attention of Musasha, who was particularly affectionate, even more than Kagaya and Akagi. Shinano wanted to follow as well but pouted in annoyance when she was denied since was neither a member of the familiar nor Belle's girlfriend. When they got to the manor, Elise had dragged everyone off, leaving Belle and Ryu alone. Giving him a thumbs up, she too left the room. The two awkwardly looked at the ground unsure how to continue until Ryu shyly looked up. With a shaky breath she raised her hand and gently grabbed his own. The white-haired boy looked up at her as her eyes did her best to stare him in the eyes. Though very shaky she just barely managed to contain her embarrassment. As it was in elven tradition to confess one's love under the moonlight of a full moon, Ryu gathered her courage. She moved to the balcony under the night sky, dragging him along. Taking a deep breath she finally let her heart speak freely. Belle, I have never felt the way I do. The way your smile makes my heart race and your touch seems so pleasant when I never allowed anyone to touch. Every moment with you is always so fun and you never cease to amaze me. Even your kindness and caring nature is something I admire. I love you, Belle. Will you exchange a vow, of eternal love with me? He was surprised for a moment, not having known how exactly she felt about him, nor did he know about her elven customs. But as his brain registered what he said, he broke into a smile and nodded. Of course, Ryu. I will always love you. Now and forever. Following Elise's suggestion, which she had given just before leaving them in the room, he closed his eyes and let the elf take charge. It was in part so that she would be brave and in part to not embarrass her and make her run away. Seeing how he waited for her, the blonde adventurer was drawn in by his lips. Inching closer and closer she closed her eyes as she could feel the anticipation nearly cause her heart to fail. Soon enough she closed the distance. For a moment she stopped, feeling his breath and warmth before finishing what she had started and feeling the softness of his lips on her own. Despite the innocent kiss, she felt the lightning shooting through her body and her heart fluttering in joy. She became absolutely enamored with the feeling and found herself unable to stop. Neither went further, both knowing that Ryu's poor heart couldn't handle more. The two didn't stop though, as her left hand found his cheek while the other draped around his shoulder. Meanwhile Belle had gently grabbed her by the waist. Separating slightly every once in a while to recover their breaths, the two kept on lightly nipping at each other's lips, both deepening and getting as close as possible until their bodies pressed against each other so much they threatened to merge. Ryu was caught up in her bliss, unable to separate and stop. Her hand caressed his cheek before giggling as his tails wrapped around her, enveloping in a fluffiness she enjoyed very much. 20 minutes is what took Ryu to calm down and be satisfied with the outcome. Now sitting on the couch, the elf leaned on his shoulder, slowly twirling a lock of his long hair while her other hand held his own. She enjoyed the warmth of his body, but as she discovered after moving to his chest, she loved hearing the sound of his heartbeat even more. It was soothing, and the blanket that were his tails provided her with a sense of safety that nothing had ever given before. I love you, Belle. I love you too, Ryu. There was a moment of silence as they enjoyed each other's presence until Belle spoke up. Say, Ryu. Yes. I won the tournament, right? Then see, can I have my wish granted right now? Once again she blushed brightly, but getting up from his chest, she turned to stare him in the eyes. All right. She knew she couldn't refuse those bright red eyes when they stared at her like that. I want to nibble on your ears. He squeaked out the last part, too embarrassed to be saying that out loud. Ryu, however, heard that very clearly with her long ears that were now under threat of a pleasurable moment. She felt the embarrassment strike her down into the depths of her mind, but with a shy nod, she agreed to let him, even if the idea nearly made her run away. How you'd. Closing her eyes she could feel his head get closer, his breath tickling her ears. Then slowly she felt his breath get warmer until the tip of her right ear ended up in between his lips. His tongue lightly grazed her pointy ear, his lips innocently nibbled, and his breath covered her head. Through it all the blonde elf couldn't hold in her moan as she felt a new kind of pleasure invade her body. Belle hearing her lovely moans, he kept going, using his hand to massage her unattended ear. Meek squeals and gentle moans escaped her mouth as she felt the wetness of his tongue caress more and more of her ear. Her eyes then spotted his defenseless tail, and in the spur of the heat she decided to grab it and hug it tightly, fluffing it as she treated it like a stuffed animal. They both blushed intensely before half an hour later they regained their sanity. Well, at least enough to get the two separated to the point where they only held hands. That was a bit too lewd, but I'll allow it this once. I'll definitely do this again. Looking into his eyes she smiled lovingly. Maybe in the future. Thank you, Belle, for giving me a chance, such happiness, care and affection. I love you. Belle then joined the rest of his other girlfriends in bed, with Ryu being the only one missing. Though she loved Belle, the ever-innocent girl wasn't ready to sleep in the same bed as Belle, nor was her heart ready to take the step to share a bed with her girlfriends and touch other people besides Elise and the Renard. The red-haired captain booed at the discovery, hoping she would join in but instead returned to her room. Geez, Lion is such party pooper. What were you expecting of that useless elf? Meh, I guess it's still too soon for her. Snuggling up to Belle, she observed their situation. Musasha laid on top, Elise was on the right while Kagaya was on the left. Akaji and Artoria were left to hug Kagaya and Elise from behind respectively, as there was no more space around the white-haired boy. Agreeing to switch around every one night, the two black-haired girls reluctantly agreed to this arrangement. As the group got bigger, they realized they'd have to either find a new system to rotate so that everyone would get their turn or simply get a big enough bed, which after taking measurements they realized it wouldn't be a viable solution for the moment. By the way, why was Rose coming over? Ah, you remember I told you about the date with her, right? Yes. Well, she's staying over in Kagaya's room right now, but tomorrow I want you to go on a date with her. Wait, what about Ryu and Akaji? The mentioned Renard popped her head over Kagaya's shoulder as she answered with a smile. Of course you'll take us on dates as well. Ryu in the morning, me in the afternoon, and then Rose for the night. You've got a busy day tomorrow, dear. Brief, but you have to give them your full attention. Of course. Ryu had entertained Estrella's idea of wearing a dress for the date, albeit very reluctantly. The idea of not being in her adventuring gear made her feel almost defenseless, even if the city was no longer that dangerous, due to having lived through the dark age of Orario. Yet if it made Belle happy, then she declared that she would try regardless. Good morning, Belle. With a shy voice she called out to the Renard who stood in front of the gates of the manor. Turning around, he was surprised by her beauty. A simple white sundress that suited her well, revealing as little as possible of her skin while maintaining her elegance. As usual, Belle praised her, not holding anything back. She always appreciated his honesty, but sometimes it embarrassed her how he could keep admitting how beautiful she was with a straight face. Belle, on the other hand, was wearing a white button-up shirt that clung to his body, showing off his well-defined muscles and broad shoulders. Completing the set, he wore black pants, and upon seeing his full figure Ryu felt herself swooning at the sight. He was just so handsome she had difficulty suppressing the blush that was creeping on her face, not counting the one that she already sported from having to wear a dress. Hiya. I'm really going on a date with Belle. With that, Belle began leading the way, all the while noticing how nervous she seemed. Before going on the date, he had followed Elise's suggestion and had studied with Estrella, learning about elven customs, traditions, and culture. He wanted her to be comfortable after all, and through that he came to understand that public affection was a little too much for the innocent elf to bear as of right now, thus deciding not to take her hand as he was used to with his other girlfriends. This decision was very much noticed by her, having seen how touchy he got with the other girls. In a way, she was both grateful and miffed by it. She was happy to see that he was as caring and loving as always, but she was hoping to use his tendency to be romantic to hold his hand, as she didn't have the courage to initiate that. Sometimes Belle is too caring, but I guess that is one of the reasons I love him so much. With a smile she slowly got closer the more they walked. They never touched shoulders or hands, but they were so close they could feel the heat of their bodies on each other. Initially she wondered if it was okay. They hadn't said a word nor touched, but upon noticing his wagging tail she could tell that he was happy just being with her, and the thought warmed her heart. Maybe just a little. It won't harm anyone, right? With a thundering heart her eyes were drawn to his hand, which she very slowly and tentatively reached for. Just the thought of what she was trying to do was leaving her blushing furiously. Then in the spur of the moment she grabbed it. Public and naked hand-holding, a bit sweaty too since she had become nervous. Kia. We're holding hands in public and Bear as well. How lewd. Belle himself chuckled as he felt her hand slip into his. He had seen her approach but said nothing, not wanting to scare her away. As she gradually got used to it, he turned his attention to her and smiled. He wasn't sure if saying anything was a good idea, so he kept quiet and watched as she turned redder and redder before looking away. Ryu looked ready to faint but just barely held on, all the while her hand found his fingers to interlace with. You okay, Ryu? He had to admit that despite knowing the reason behind her blush, the sheer intensity had left him worried and he couldn't help but ask her. I am fine. You don't have to force yourself, Ryu. I'm not. Well, in a way I am. But don't get it wrong, Belle. I'm forcing myself because while it is embarrassing and against my nature, it is my heart that wants to. I really like feeling you close to me. It's just that I'm not used to it. But I really do want to show everyone that we love each other. Hee hee, then I won't stop you. But please be careful and take care of yourself. If it becomes too much, please don't force yourself to endure it. Seeing his worried face and the love in his eyes, she found herself unable to stop from moving forwards and hugging him. The Renard was surprised but didn't fight it, instead gently returning the embrace. Wow, I'm hugging Belle in public. When did I become so lewd? How about we go to Cafe Wish and get something to eat? Alright, that sounds good. Reluctantly she relaxed her arms and the two resumed walking forwards. They began exchanging stories and recounting funny moments while making their way to their destination. When they did arrive, they were surprised by the appearance of a few elves they knew. Riveria, accompanied by Lefia and Alicia, arrived at the same time as the couple. Oh, Ryu, Krenel-san. It's a pleasure to see you. The high elf hadn't thought she'd meet them there but greeted them with the elegance that was to be expected of a princess. Alicia and Lefia behind her gave them a short bow while the two returned the greetings. Wondering on what occasion they were there, she was surprised to learn that the two recently started dating, and by recently that meant just the day before. In a way she had an inkling of that, but she didn't want to offend anyone by rudely or incorrectly assuming that they were going out. I have to say I didn't expect this of you. The jade-haired elf had known the Gale for a long time, and she also knew how pure her thoughts on love were as well as how affected she was by elven culture. She was well known after all for crushing anyone who tried to touch her. Only Estrella and Elise were known to have touched her skin, but she guessed she could add one more to the list now. Well, it just kind of happened. Elise also talked me into it, and seeing everyone join I didn't want to be left behind. Talked into. Please don't misunderstand. I love Belle very much. It just started as we talked. The more we did, the more I saw what kind of person he was. Kind and compassionate and always willing to help others. Desperately trying to convince them that she wasn't forced into this, she disregarded any kind of embarrassment to tell them how she felt about Belle, telling them all about his good points and his cute points. In the end, she started falling into a loop, telling them all about how she was hopelessly in love. Belle chuckled, getting the attention of the three elves. Sorry about that, Ryu is pretty shy. This is our first date after all. Not at all, it was my fault. I didn't mean to doubt her or you. It's okay. His red eyes then focused again on Ryu, who was lost talking about their relationship. His long ears that had stayed droopy, hiding amongst his hair, suddenly stood up to the fascination of the three Loki members and moved to poke at Ryu's own elven ears. The girl yelped and pouted at Belle, who waved his hands to apologize. Hee, sorry about that, but you were lost in thought, so I had to bring you back. We don't have that much time after all. Sorry, it's just that I wanted Riveria-sama to know that I love you. I love you too, Ryu. He said that with a smile, unaware of what his tails were doing. Upon seeing it, however, the four elves either blushed or giggled. Ryu covered her eyes as she cooed. Not knowing why she was suddenly so flustered, he turned to Riveria, who pointed out to his tails. He turned around to see his tails making heart shapes. He blushed but didn't shy away from the stares he received, instead chuckling at that before returning his attention to Riveria. Sorry about that, I can't help it with my girlfriends. I do love them after all. There is nothing to apologize for. Love is a beautiful thing, and tails do often show what a person really feels, at least for beast people. If they do make hearts, then it just goes to show how genuine your feelings for them are. I'm happy to see that Ryu has found someone who loves her so much. But we digress, we should head inside. We've already taken enough of your time, I believe. How about you join us, Belle-san? The jade-haired elf turned to her successor and sighed, calling out her name with disappointment. Hey, don't worry, Riveria-san. I'm sure she was just being polite. But I will have to decline the offer, Lefia. I want to focus my attention only on Ryu for this date. Realizing why her teacher looked ready to discipline her, she immediately bowed and apologized. Don't worry about it, Lefia. Belle's right, you don't have to apologize. Perhaps we'll take you on the offer next time we meet. The orange-haired elf nodded, secretly giddy that she had gotten to talk to Ryu. She had always admired her fellow elf for being an incredibly strong magic swordswoman, as well as the fact that she fought for justice. With that taken care of, the two groups separated as they went in and were assigned their tables. The elves of the Loki familia, though, kept on sneaking glances at the couple, wanting to see how things progressed, and often found themselves on the verge of dying of a heart attack at the cute displays of affection the two showed each other. Mao, that was embarrassing. I can't believe I ranted in front of Riveria-sama. I think it was pretty cute. Not helping Belle. She couldn't, however, be mad at him as his tail snuck over to her and caressed her ankle, bringing a smile to her face. Seeing his hand on the table, she took it after making sure they wouldn't be interrupted by a waiter. I know I said this yesterday, but thank you, Belle. I'm really happy. This is all so good it feels like a dream. But it isn't. So don't worry, I will always be here for you. Smiling, she started caressing the large back of his hand, finding the warmth comforting. The waiter then approached, as if sensing the opportunity to take their orders without disturbing a moment. As soon as he was done taking their orders, he vanished again amidst the many customers. While waiting for their drinks, the doorbell rang as another familiar face entered the store. With bright red hair and a body that could have been mistaken for that of a 10-year-old, Alexander entered the cafe. Neither of the lovers noticed him until he passed by their table, nor did he notice them until he saw Ryu from behind, recognizing her distinct blonde hair that held a green hue to them. However, as he went to speak to her with a certain pep to his walk, he was disappointed to see that she was joyfully conversing with a rather famous Renard. He knew she liked someone else, and he could have guessed who it was as the elf kept glancing at him throughout the match, but he'd be lying if he didn't hope for that to be false. Still, he didn't want anyone to notice, and he certainly couldn't nor would blame Belle for this. He was above other people like Murakami, the witch rant he had witnessed as he was sitting amongst them in the stands. It was honestly disappointing to him how some people could just push their ideals onto others without blinking an eye. As a ruler, he could not allow such gestures. He couldn't allow his selfishness to harm others, not when they were innocent and had no reason to bear the brunt of other people's failures and insecurities. Hello there, Ryu-san, Belle-san. The two turned their heads to see him passing by, with what they assumed were bodyguards. The two gave him a short bow and returned his greeting. So, Belle-san is the one you fell for. With a blush yet without hesitating, she nodded, taking the white-haired adventurer's hand to show her affection for him. With a satisfied smile, he wished them a pleasant date and left to sit at his own table where, just like the three elves from Loki's Familia, just observed the tender moments between the two lovers. He didn't want to disturb them during their moment, but they were very endearing, so much so that it made it hard to not stare. Soon later their orders arrived along with a few extra delicacies that were on the house. Apparently, the owner really enjoyed their fights and rooted for both of them, so as a gesture of goodwill and to congratulate them for their amazing prowess offered them the extra dishes as a prize. Ryu immediately learnt that Belle didn't like sweets, something she made a mental note of for future wife duties. Here Ryu, say Tilda. The flustered elf looked around and seeing as there wasn't much or any attention on them at all, she leaned forwards, taking the food Belle offered on his fork in her mouth. Like Belle would, her ears wiggled up and down in part because it was delicious, in part because she was excited from being fed by Belle. The two kept feeding each other, with Ryu never minding the public setting as she got lost in their little world. What should we do now? Well, we do have a couple of hours before I have to go and have a date with Akagi. That we do. I, if you don't mind, Belle, there is a place I'd like to go. Of course, Ryu. Seeing his bright smile made her heart melt all over again as he supported her wish. Then let's go. The place they reached was certainly not what he had in mind. Ryu had taken him to a music shop, which sold instruments and other tools for music. He did remember hearing that elves were artistically gifted people, so he supposed that it shouldn't have been surprising that she liked music. Even if he'd be lying if he said he wasn't taken back, never having heard or known of her musical talent. You see, Belle, when we elves court each other, we tend to make poems or play music. As you know, I'm not good with words, so I was hoping we could try with music. Of course, but I'm not good with music. I mean, I've never held, much less played an instrument. Don't worry about that. We can learn. Besides, it's me who's courting you. She blushed bright red as the last few words were whispered out, but heard nonetheless by the white fox. Welcome. Oh my, if it isn't our favorite regular, Ryu. What's the occasion this time? Seeing her hand shyly hold onto Belle's fingers, the shopkeeper, a cow person in her 30s, immediately giggled as she understood what this was about. So even you fall in love? Oh, of course I do. How cute. Well, mister, welcome to Lindy's music shop. The name's Lindy and I'm the owner. Here we offer many services, ranging from just the purchase of an instrument to renting soundproof rooms to practice or rent instruments, and just recently we even expanded and opened up rooms for karaoke and other such activities. We found that there are many couples that like to share their expertise over music with each other, particularly our magically inclined elves. Thank you, Miss Lindy. I'm Belle. Just take good care of her. Ryu, thoroughly embarrassed, decided to drag Belle away, much to the amusement of the owner. Ryu then picked a few instruments and went to one of the practice rooms where she showed Belle her skills with the violin and the flute but eventually settled for the lyre. Seeing this, Belle was interested in her choice of instrument as it reminded him of someone else. Taking after Ryulu. How did you know? She's a famous poet, Ryu. She traveled with Argonaut and recounted his tales with Olna. She played the lyre while traveling around and helping other races despite the orders to retreat from the Elven King at the time. A true selfless hero. With an embarrassed nod she admitted that she looked up to said person. Ryu then performed an old song that had been written by the ancient elf, telling the story of Argonaut as he fought to save the princess of Lacryos. Belle listened and found that his interest in music grew the more she played for him. How about you try it, Belle? After playing a few songs for him, Ryu offered to teach Belle who though nervous decided to do his best for his lover. Alright. Seeing the opportunity, Ryu sat behind him and put her arms around his toned body and over his arms, while pressing herself into his back. Leaning her head on his shoulder was oddly comfortable, but it didn't distract her from reaching out to his hands and gently laying them over as she made Belle mimic her movement. Slowly he managed to follow her instructions, playing a simple yet clear tune. Lulled by the peaceful notes of the lyre, Ryu found herself relaxing on his back, giving tips and advice every once in a while. Not bad, Belle. I learnt from the best. Feeling the smile creep onto her face, she leaned forwards as he turned around and pecked his lips. When she broke off, she was almost pulled back in by the sheer intensity of his gaze. Her blue eyes were fixated on his red ones, only stopping herself from closing the distance between them as she remembered that their time together was coming to a close. Thank you, Belle. This was the best day I've had. Let's do this again when we get the chance. I'll hold you to that. 2 hours had passed sooner than they had thought and realized that their time together was over. Cleaning up the room, the two then thanked the owner and paid the fee before leaving for the Stardust Garden. The elf stood by the gate as she was dropped off by Belle as he had another date to go to. They had said goodbye, but just before he could leave, she grabbed his hand. Pulling him back, she kissed him for a few long seconds before scurrying back inside, her face red in embarrassment. Hee, how cute. Belle giddily made his way to the Rising Sun Manor where Akagi, dressed in a red and black regal kimono, awaited his arrival. Of course, once again the unrelenting noble of the Far East had deemed himself the main character of the story and pestered the woman who paid him no attention. The weather is perfect, so why not simply go out and have lunch together? Because I'm waiting someone else. Besides, you know you're not allowed here, right? Aside from Amaterasu-sama, only members of the imperial family and the executives are allowed to come as residents. Obviously, there are also those with special privileges and get to come and go as they please. Such as, I'd like to believe I am, but since that's not the case, who gets to enter as he pleases? My handsome date right there. Akagi pointed to Belle, who having heard the conversation was sure he'd get a headache soon. Nonetheless, he was here to take her on a date, and he wasn't going to go back on his promise. He's allowed to come and go. Of course he is. He is pretty much an honorary member of the Familia and soon to be son-in-law to the imperial family. He is someone who can use the sun breathing, is on good terms with everyone in the Familia, is friends with Amaterasu-sama, is loved dearly by Akari and Shinano, is dating me, and let's not forget the wonderful sounds that he causes Musasha to make when he beds his fiancée. Akagi. She'd kill you if she heard that out of you. Belle knew Musasha didn't hesitate to swing her tachi when someone embarrassed her. Oh, come on, Belle. I have my room next to hers. Even if it's soundproofed, me and Shinano, who have adjacent rooms, could feel the bumps and still hear some of the words you made her scream. I hope you'll make me make those same noises soon enough. I meant don't say that out loud. His face burnt the same color as his eyes as she revealed some of the raunchier details of his sexual escapades with the purple-haired princess. Sorry. She then nonchalantly skipped her way up to him and put her arms around his neck. Say, now that we're dating, wouldn't it be fine for me to kiss you on the lips? I guess, but maybe we should address him. Akagi didn't let him finish and gently kissed him, savoring the taste of the soft lips. It was as enjoyable as Musasha had said. The warmth in particular was something she really liked. She very much wanted to get a bit more passionate but decided not to. She knew that if she let loose now and used her tongue she'd be unable to hold back, instead taking him into her room to get down to the more intimate aspects of a relationship. Belle, now dating her, felt no need to push her away or held her back. Instead he gave in and put his hands on her waist, pulling her in a little, much to the joy of Akagi as he finally reciprocated her feelings. Hey, what do you think you're doing? Akaji looked back at him with an annoyed gaze. Kissing my lovely boyfriend, what's it to you? TCH, don't worry, I plan to hook him up with all of my sisters, well not Akari for obvious reasons. But Shinano, Kaga, Amaji and Yamato, I'll make sure they all get a taste of this. What? You think this will be allowed? Of course. Musasha already did the deed with him and is officially engaged to him. I'm dating him. Shinano is head over heels for him. Kaga and Amaji don't seem against the idea when I suggest it, and Yamato, well, I'll think of a way. Anyways, anything else? Welp not interested. Too bad. Let's go, Belle. Akaji enjoyed the look of pure rage as she toyed with the noble before grabbing her lover's arm and leading him away. Belle curiously glanced back but preferred to stay quiet instead of causing a fight. The noble was annoying, but he hadn't done anything of inherently wrong so far, so he preferred not causing more problems for the joyful Renard girl who clung to his arm. Sorry about that. Not at all. If anything, I'm sorry since it felt like I'm the reason he's been so irate recently. Fufu, don't mind it, Belle. Forget him and focus only on me for this date. Of course. She wagged her tail happily and kept on walking down the road with her arm still linked to his. Having heard all about Belle from Musasha, Shinano, and Amaterasu, she wanted to expose him to more of her homeland's culture, including their cooking. To make this easier, Tanjiro and Nezuko had went around and asked for information so that the two could have a happy time together, which Akaji had thanked both for. The Kamadu siblings really wanted their relationship to be successful as natural of the two golden-hearted teenagers. Wait, you're level 4. Akaji had began talking about herself and her sisters while walking down East Main. Yup, about to become level 5. Kaga is also level 4 while Amaji, who is our eldest, is level 5. She could have the peak of level 6 by now, but because she isn't interested in combat, she doesn't train as frequently as the others. Amaterasu didn't mention any of that. She only told me there were 2 level 7s, 2 level 6s, and, what was it? 11 level 5s. Well, she probably didn't mention that since we weren't there. Also, there is another high-leveled person. Our sister Yamato, who isn't here as she stayed in the Far East, is also a level 6. Hey! He surprised. I really am. Well, she is a general and follows her strict military upbringing. But be careful around her, she hates men. The information was something he certainly didn't expect, but the serious and worried look in her face meant she was serious about that. Don't worry, we'll protect you from her and we won't let her interfere in our relationship, but I'm saying this just in case. When you do meet her, be careful around her. She doesn't hesitate to swing her sword recklessly, more so than Musasha. If anything, your purple-haired fiancé is a tame kitten in comparison. Right, I'll be careful. Her smile soon returned and her tail wagged once more as the serious talk was out of the way. The destination that had been scouted by Tanjiro was already in sight, and it only took a couple of minutes from there to arrive. The site was a pleasant reminder of the Far East to Akaji, as the building was built in the same style, making it stand out amongst the regular cubic constructs. Come on, Belle, let's go in. The restaurant was brightly lit with shades of light maple wood color. It had tables and seats at the counter, as well as rooms for more privacy or larger groups. As they entered, a woman with black hair and brown eyes greeted them. She quickly recognized the princess and bowed respectfully. Belle supposed that was rather normal since his girlfriend was Imperiality. Heimsama, to think you'd visit our humbled establishment. It is an honor to be able to host you. I'm surprised you recognized me so fast. Well, anyone from the Far East would know, besides not many would wear such extravagant clothing. Well, today is a special occasion. ARA, what lucky day is it for our restaurant? My first date with my beloved Belle. The white-haired Renard nervously waved at the woman, who looked surprised at his appearance. Oh my, a princess with the rising star of Orario. What a combination. You know about him as well. Akaji seemed to enjoy the fact that Belle was well known. It brought a sense of pride to her. Of course, who wouldn't? After those magnificent battles, not to mention that he is a 9-tailed Renard. Only Shinano-sama was known to be one, so to see a new one appear is like a miracle brought by the heavens for us Far Eastern people. Besides, he is famous for his many relationships, such as with the Phoenix and your sister Misasha-sama. Haha, you heard that, Belle? Well, I felt like joining as well, so I asked him to date me as well. Ara, how bold of you, Heim-sama. Then please follow him. He will take you to a private room only for you two. Thank you. The woman nodded at a waiter who bowed and kindly led them to a cubicle room. Entering the room, The waiter closed the door behind them and left them to settle down and select from the menu. Belle saw many weird foods he hadn't ever seen before, which left him confused and Akagi amused. She moved around the table and scooted closer to him before explaining whenever he had questions. She learnt of his tastes, particularly how he wasn't a fan of sweet things, eventually helping him choose something to order. Akagi then rang a bell which immediately brought the waiter to their room and took their orders. As he left the room, returned to silence for a moment before the brown-haired fox laid eyes on her boyfriend. She couldn't resist the urge anymore and began teasing him in whatever way she could. The sight of his blushing face and innocent eyes, despite the many lewd things he had done with countless women, left her interested at how he could retain such purity. Soon her hands began caressing his waist and his right cheek. Despite all the pervy things you did with my sister, you still managed to get shy. How adorable, Belle. This and that are different. Where did all your confidence go? I thought that Elise would have rubbed off on you, but perhaps not. She did, quite a bit actually. With people like Ryu and Artoria I can take charge, but I really can't handle girls like you who are so forwards and, well, brazen. Elise is also quite lively, but I can get a better reading of what she thinks and feels. Oh, so your weakness are eccentric girls like me and Elise then? I guess. Akagi giggled as the precious being that was Belle just showed more and more of his cute sides, which she found too irresistible. Soon her lips were back to hovering over his, her breath palpable on his lips. They looked each other in the eye, and Akagi knew she didn't have to ask the question, only closing her eyes. Belle soon followed and initiated the kiss, gently joining their lips for an intimate yet chaste exchange. They separated after a dozen seconds to take in air before continuing 3 more times. I know you can't say this until you're certain, but know this, Belle. I love you. Thank you, Akagi. I'll be waiting for you. I won't make you wait long, I promise. That's good enough for me. Hearing the waiter approaching with a few twitches of their ears, they immediately returned to their seats and made sure there was nothing out of place. Just as they were done, the door slid open and in entered a couple of people that carried wooden plates and boats, all filled with delicious-looking dishes. Please enjoy. The two looked with bright eyes at the delicacies and started eating. Just like the other girlfriends, Akagi enjoyed seeing the wiggles of his ears and the wags of his tail as he tasted the food. It truly was a precious sight. The sheer innocence that hid behind the warrior that fell all his level 5 opponents was too amusing of a sight to the older fox girl. Oh my, he is so adorable. She quickly finished her food and busied herself cooing at the sight of the white fox enjoying the new tastes that he had never tried before. He was initially amazed by the composition of the food, but became hesitant to continue as he came across the blocks of rice with slices of raw fish on top of them. He had devoured gingerly everything so far, but never having tasted raw meat he was skeptical, until Akagi with a giggle offered to feed him. However, he wasn't ready for her to feed him her style. She took the piece of sushi, as she called it, in her mouth before leaning forwards towards Belle. She could hear him gulp as he got the hint on what to do and slowly came closer. Flustered, he ignored the fact that the fish was raw and bit onto the opposing end of the sushi piece. Before he could take it away, though, Akagi pulled him closer and kissed him, finally allowing him to have his food. As she got back into her seat, she licked her lips and grinned, satisfied with the little teasing action. Wasn't so bad, was it, Belle? Why, yeah, it wasn't. Fufu, you're so adorable. The two continued with Akagi teaching him what each piece was made with and how to eat it, as well as the various condiments he could use. Belle found that a mixture of wasabi and soy sauce was his favorite condiment to use when eating the raw fish pieces. Amongst the ones he tried, his favorite nigirus were probably the bright orange salmon, also called sake in the Far Eastern language, while finding that he wasn't a fan of the unagi ones, or eels as he was told by Akagi. What are the plans after this? Well, first of all, I wanted to get some gifts for my sisters and a souvenir for Yamato. Then, we could go do some sightseeing and perhaps you could help me find new clothes. Belle nodded in agreement with a big smile. Of course. Then let's go. Their next destination was a street filled with luxurious shops which had been made with royalty, nobles, merchants, and other rich people like high-level adventurers as the targeted audience. Being the first time he set foot in such high-quality shops, Belle couldn't help but feel nervous, having lived a humble life in his village until recently. Even now, the extravagance he experienced through the status of a high-leveled adventurer and his lovers was overwhelming, particularly after having experienced the kind of influence Estrella, an S-rank familiar, had, which was comparable in status, strength, and wealth as a noble. Royalty, on the other hand, was in a league of its own. Both Artoria and the Far Eastern Imperial family had shown him luxuries he had never imagined. Luckily, Akagi was there to ease him into it, otherwise he was sure he'd have passed out. What do you think? Except when she showed off her clothing option, in which she didn't hold back her punches. Instead, she very gratefully enjoyed his reactions as he blushed, stuttered and squirmed. He couldn't help it when he saw her in an elegant and slightly revealing black and red kimono that showed a bit of her cleavage, as instead of closing fully, the edges loosely draped onto her shoulders. The bottom part too was like a dress, reaching her ankles at the back but becoming shorter as it reached her front, all the way up to her lower thigh, and a second thinner satin red frilly layer underneath. Why, you look really gorgeous. Hee, thank you, Belle. Look forward to ogle more at the ball, since I'll be wearing this then. I wouldn't ogle you. Even if I wanted you to. Then maybe, just a little. The brown-haired beauty giggled, seeing his bashful look as his eyes stared at her before gazing to the side. But don't show off too much. I don't want others to stare at you too much. Akagi froze as she felt her heart thump. She had no idea she could fall further and further down in the pit that was her love for Belle, but the sheer adorable shyness he showed as he was unable to look her in the eyes with his request made her inside hot. She squirmed as he showed that he too could get jealous, and soon a beautiful smile bloomed on her face. Fufu, don't worry, Belle. I wouldn't want others to ogle at me, only you can. Besides, there is one more outfit I have yet to show you. This one I can and will only show you, no one else. For your eyes alone, only for the one that I love. The curtains closed again, and he could hear the rustling of clothes being discarded and put on. This time, however, the curtains didn't open. Instead, an arm came out that called him over with her index finger. Answering the call, he walked up until he was pulled in, and his eyes widened in shock. Akagi was inside, standing in a very sexy and very stimulating lingerie. Like what you see. Belle couldn't answer, only nodding furiously. But I didn't know you could get jealous. How adorable. Well, you are my girlfriends. Fufu, I don't mind if you say we are your women, or wives, or queens, or whatever other nickname you want to give me. But I promise you, Belle, I am yours and only yours. Loyal only to you who has stolen my heart. The only one I love, and the only one who gets to see this outfit. The only who gets to experience this side of me. It is the loss of every other man in Gakkai. And your gain, Belle. Her arms wrapped around him tightly hugged him, her nose sniffing his neck while her tongue nipped at his collarbone. Akagi, stop Tilda, Fufu, you're so adorable, it is hard to contain myself. And so are you, but we can't do this here. Fine, fine. But I hope you won't keep me waiting too long, otherwise I might accidentally lose it, and who knows where I might pounce on you. In the middle of the road. I would prefer avoiding that, so I'll keep that in mind. Good. Akagi let him out of the cubicle and proceeded to change back into her clothes while carrying the others to the counter, with Belle escorting her like the gentleman he was. Now let's go and see what presents we can buy for my dear sisters. They too need to go to the ball after all. Sitting on the soft grass, Akagi and Belle relaxed their bodies by leaning on each other. The bags filled with products they had bought sitting nearby while they soaked in the peaceful moment. It had been a few hours, and it was already 4 in the afternoon by the time they had settled down. Belle gently laid his head on top of hers, the brown ears tickling his nose every once in a while, to tease him. In response, his own ears quipped back, making them both giggle. You know, it's nice to relax after the tournament. Constantly fighting and being filled with anxiety makes this moment of peace all the sweeter. Fufu, you put up a magnificent display there. That I did. Akagi suddenly started shifting, making Belle pull back his weight to avoid falling over. The female Renard then pat her laps, inviting him down. Admittedly tired, he decided to lean down on her and sighed out as his head found the softness of her thighs very welcoming. Why don't you take a nap, dear? But Dash, we've had plenty of time to ourselves on our date. Besides, this is for us to get closer, to know each other better, and for us to develop a more intimate bond. What better way to show how much you can trust me than taking a nap while I watch over you? Besides, Belle, I know you're loyal and dedicated, but I don't want you to neglect yourself for that. I want you to be healthy like you do for me. I want you to be okay, so please take a nap. You've been working hard for us all. Giving up on resisting, he let the exhaustion take over as he soon fell asleep on her thighs, a smile on his face right as everything went dark. Akagi in the meantime watched his face, gingerly caressing his cheek as she studied his cute face. Looking down at him, she couldn't help but feel like this new slow and romantic pace wasn't so bad after all, so she'd indulge in it for now. Time flew by and 2 hours passed before she knew it. She had been so focused on his snoring face, her hand never having ceased to stroke his soft cheek or ruffle his fluffy hair for even a second. It was only as a ray of the sun hit her in the eye that she finally noticed the setting sun. As the light bothered Bell just as much, he too began stirring from his sleep, and soon enough his eyes fluttered open. The first sight that caught his attention was Akagi, clad in the orange shade of the sunset. It was a sight to behold that prompted him to move without even realizing it. "Hello, sleepyhead. How? Bell. What's th miles per hour?" He had sat up, but instead of greeting her, he had silently leaned forward and captured her lips in his own. She had been surprised by the sudden boldness, but she very gladly welcomed it as her hands snaked around his body and pulled him closer. The two exchanged passionately until they had to breathe. "Bell. Sorry, you were too beautiful. Geez, you big dork. And you're too handsome." She then leaned back in her hands, cupping his cheeks while his grabbed her by the waist. Their hands, tails, and ears entangled while their intimate exchange became more passionate, with Akagi slipping her tongue in. She soon found, however, that his experienced tongue was too much for the overconfident woman to handle and found herself at his mercy, not that she regretted it, mind you. Their hands clamped harder while their bodies smooshed against each other, getting as close as they physically could. "Huh. Bell, you are so hot. I need more." The two continued kissing without ever taking a break, as Akagi soon got into it and became used to the feeling that she was getting addicted to. She never knew a kiss could feel so nice, but she wasn't ready to give up or stop. She slowly moved until her leg went over him and she mounted the white-haired man, climbing on top of him and settling on his lap. Her legs wrapped around his hip and her hands around his neck, both being too engrossed with the kiss to notice the stares of the jealous men and women the couple received. Finally, their kiss broke and realized it was time for them to start heading back unless they wanted to be late, and Bell wouldn't be late for a date. He couldn't be late to his date with Rose, so the two got up, Bell helping his girlfriend up before heading straight for the Rising Sun Manor. When they arrived, her sisters, the Kamadu siblings and Amaterasu, had been standing there and waiting for their return. "Akagi, I assume you had a pleasant time with Bell." "Yes, Amaterasu-sama. He was a most wonderful gentleman." "Thank you, Bell, for going along with her whims." "Not at all. Though she is very forwards with her advances, I have to say that I have come to greatly treasure her presence." His hands, still intertwined with hers, gave her a squeeze which made the brown-haired Renard blush, though she happily returned the gesture by nuzzling his cheek. A sight which surprised the various members of the Far Eastern familia, never before having witnessed Akagi succumb to embarrassment or act meek. It was also the first time they had witnessed her being in love. However, it was something that the goddess greatly appreciated, as it showed her that their relationship was sailing smoothly and Akagi's affections were genuine. "Well then, I'll see you at the ball. Hope you will entertain a dance request by me, Bell. But you should get going now. Don't want to be late to a date, would you now?" "Of course I will, and no, don't want to keep Rose waiting. See you." The other members all waved their goodbyes, but not before Akagi tugged his sleeve to sneak in one last teasing line. "Try not to bed her on the first date, Bell." The plaza was full of people despite the sun having begun to set. The mood was festive, but amongst it all he easily spotted his date, standing out amongst all others in his eyes. The redhead Rose awkwardly looked around as she waited for him. Not wanting to make her wait any longer, he quickly approached her and waved at her, getting her attention. He couldn't help but notice how different she looked in her new clothes, only having ever seen her in her guild uniform. She had clearly taken care of her figure for the date, wearing a black dress with a long slit on one of her thighs and a generous sight of her cleavage. Her hair was styled in his favorite ponytail and her lips were covered with a luscious red lipstick. "Rose." The apprehensive look on her face turned into a gentle smile as she spotted the Renard. Her eyes traveled over his body, not being able to stop the way she bit her lower lip at the sight of his delectable body, despite his age. As expected of an adventurer and a warrior who trained hard for years, his lean physique was doing wonders to the heat in her core and her heart. She was glad he had arrived when he did, cause she felt awkward waiting there while also feeling the stares of other people, many of which belonged to the lecherous leers of men looking for a hookup. She was used to rejecting them coldly, but her current outfit left her feeling vulnerable, so when she saw them approaching her to try and hit on her, she was glad to have heard the voice of her savior. The men, who had mistaken her for a woman without a partner, realized that she was already taken and Bell's reputation preceded him, so none were ballsy enough to try and fight him. She was quick to latch herself onto his arm, if only because she hoped to use him to keep the eyes of everyone else away from her. "You okay?" "Yes, thanks to you. Sorry about that, didn't mean to be late." "It's okay, Bell. I appreciate you coming here. Now, let's have dinner. I bet you're starving. Her affirmation was reinforced by his rumbling stomach, which had him blushing bright red, much to her amusement. She could already tell she wasn't going to regret hanging out with the adorable white-haired Renard. The two then walked forwards, making their way to the restaurant that Elise had reserved in advance. Being in a popular and brightly lit street, Belle was somewhat surprised to see the sheer joy and life that Orario had to offer even in the late evening. How was your day so far, Rose? Boring. As you know, work at the guild doesn't get very exciting. I guess that is understandable, hee. Sure, there are some times when something goes down, like a brawl or an argument, but other than that, it's always all about the paperwork, exchanging their magic stones, dealing with some arrogant mutt and so on. My shifts are from 7 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon. I just barely had the time to go home and take a bath before coming here. You do look very beautiful today, Rose. Well, not that you usually aren't. Rose giggled, finding his honesty charming. Thank you, Belle. I wanted to make myself as good-looking as possible for this. You definitely aren't letting me down on that. All right, sweet talker, let's head in and eat. He hadn't noticed they had arrived, having only focused on her amber eyes. Seeing the entrance, he held the door open for her, earning a giggle from the red-haired woman before following her to their table, which had been arranged on the terrace with a magnificent sight of the nightlife of the city. So far, Belle had earned quite a few points in Rose's book and made a mental note of the good impression she got, as well as reminding herself to treat him to a reward later. From there, time passed by in flash. The two chatted and recounted their childhood stories, with Rose finding it endearing how innocent Belle was. Amidst their fun conversation, they took a moment to state what she wished to have out of this relationship, highlighting her desire to have a child in the near future. Though Belle wanted to wait a while, he agreed with Rose, saying he too desired to make a family of his own, which she appreciated. As their food arrived, consisting of juicy steaks and crunchy fries, their talk returned to their fun hobbies and past stories. He once again earned some brownie points, as his eyes did not lecherously stare at her body, instead, to her surprise, often staying on her eyes or her red hair, only occasionally going down to her cleavage when she purposefully tightened her arms and drew his attention to her boobs. The redhead had quickly become comfortable with his presence and found an unusual joy in teasing the poor boy, particularly when she told him of the first time he killed a goblin. Really, Belle? That was a simple goblin, foo-foo. She was barely holding back her laughter, which an indignant Belle pouted at her in faux anger, though also blushing. It was the first time I killed one. But it's a goblin. I was bullied by those nasty green monsters, Mao. She kept giggling before letting her hand find his own. Her other arm supported her head, as she leaned on it to stare at her lover's adorable red dusting on his cheeks. Her fingers gently caressed his own, finding the warmth of his larger hand very soothing, more so than any other man she had been with. You're so handsome, you know. Belle sputtered a bit at the sudden confession, but shyly nodded. Thank you. You're also really beautiful. Seeing the slight blush on her face, he couldn't tell if it was due to his comment or the amount of wine that she had downed, or perhaps a combination of both. Their plates had been cleaned up of its contents hours prior, the two now simply basking in the presence of each other. However, he soon dictated that the alcohol was getting to her head as she became silent but rather proactive with her advances. Deciding that they had enough fun for the day, he made sure to hold her hand while directing them out. Paying for the dinner, Rose hugged his arm as he escorted her into the night. The moon high up in the sky allowed a gentle white light to shine down on them. Belle was grateful that her drunken state wasn't a loud and wild one, having seen what some people did when they ingested too much of the liquid. The werewolf, clearly feeling the effects now, leaned heavily on her lover, unable to walk in a straight line without his support. Seeing her difficulty, the ever-loving boyfriend picked her up bridal style, causing the girl to yelp and let the sound rebound in the quiet street. She glared with annoyance at him for not telling her, but lost all the aggressiveness when he smiled at her. Giving up on the idea to chastise him, she leaned her head against his shoulder and neck, soon finding his smell captivating. Pulling her arms around his neck, she drew closer and nuzzled his collarbone. The manly smell was so intoxicating that she couldn't help it when her nose started sniffing, before eventually leaning to tentative licks and gentle nips and kisses around the area. Belle shivered at the warm feeling but didn't have it in him to stop her. Luckily, the girl was conscious enough to give him directions to her house, which made it easy for him to navigate the dark city. He was also thanking the heavens for the lack of people on the road this late into the night, since carrying a girl in your arms in the middle of the street was earning him weird stares, and those were already embarrassing enough for his poor heart. We're here, Rose. The girl didn't answer, only moving one of her hands from his neck to her chest and fishing the key from in between her generous mounds. Belle blushed bright red at the gesture as she dropped them in his hands after he slowly let her down. Unlocking the door, he turned to Rose only to be ushered in by her. Once inside, the door closed with a click as the lock barred entrance to anyone outside. Rose. Belle. Ha, do you want to? The straps of her dress that were draped over her shoulders began sliding off. The only reason the dress stopped from falling completely being due to her arms that were under her boobs, uplifting them and making them seem bigger than they were. The Renard gulped but shook his head out of his stupor to snap himself out of his trance. Before she could remove her clothes, he reached out and grabbed her shoulders, all the while thinking about where to look. He wanted to look away, but fearing it might be rude or might make her feel rejected, he settled his gaze onto her eyes. Belle. Why? Don't you want to? He could feel the pain in her voice, so he quickly hugged her, wanting to dispel her worries. It's not that, Rose. You're incredibly beautiful, and I don't think there is anyone sane out there that would be able to resist such an offer by you. Definitely not when a gorgeous wolf like such as yourself strips naked in front of you. Then, why? Am I not your type? Of course not, Rose. But you're not looking for a fling, are you? It's not a one-night stand, and I don't think you plan to be a single mother either. I know, you want to be a mother, and Elise told me how much you yearn for it. But this is meant to be a long-term, no a permanent relationship. A loving relationship where we look after each other. That's why we have time, and I want to do things properly, not half-heartedly. I don't want you to regret it. I want you to be happy, and I know you're not the type to sleep with someone on the first date. I don't want to change that now. Belle, that means so much more to than you'd think. But if you're worried about that, then don't. I may be drunk, but I am aware enough to know what I want or don't. I wouldn't regret it. Perhaps, but I want it to be romantic, and I want to be with the real you, without the influence of the alcohol. Let's start slow and work our way up, make it memorable. Rose thought about it for a while before leaning forwards and putting her arms around him. All right. You better make this worth the wait. I plan to. Belle, can you stay with me until I fall asleep? I will. He took the straps from her dainty fingers and pulled them back up before leading her to her room. While Rose changed into her sleepwear, he went and got a much-needed glass of water for her. By the time he returned to her room, he saw her already tucked in under her sheets. With a gentle smile, he approached her and on the side of the bed. Here you go. Thanks. She gratefully accepted the glass and took a few sips. Watching her, his hand moved on its own, caressing her head and rubbing her ears. Rose felt equally embarrassed and happy as the warmth of his hand covered her head. Take this spare key. Rose blushed as she gave him access to her apartment. Are you sure? Yes. Besides, you'll have to lock the door when you leave. Leaning down, he placed a kiss on her right temple, which she leaned into. He pat her head and wished her good night, waiting until she fell asleep and her cute little snores filled the room. Making sure she wouldn't wake up again, he then left, locking the door behind him. Once outside, he looked up at the moon and took a deep breath. It had been a busy day, but a fun one nonetheless. He was grateful to have so many wonderful women that loved him so dearly and once again vowed to do his best for them. Belle dreaded the look in Mia's eyes as she and the other members of the Hostess of Fertility grinned at him. It was early in the morning, somewhere around 7 in the morning. He had decided to return to the establishment early to get ready for his shift, but was greeted by all the members waiting for his arrival, and he had to say, their presence unnerved him. Their grins were big and wide, showing off their bad intentions. They had something planned, and he was sure he wasn't going to like it nor have fun today. Well, look who decided to show up. Come on, loverboy, time to get to work. I hope you're ready for hell. Today will be the worst day of your life. The girls were all enjoying the sight of his terrified face, a little too much for his taste. Please go easy on me. Oh no, today there is no easy mode. We're going straight into nightmare mode. Belle noticed that there were a few new staff members, beast girls he had never seen before. Soon enough, he found himself grabbed by the girls, who had no problem smothering his arms with their boobs. 2 girls held each of his arms, keeping him from running away. Then he saw it, the bane of his existence. A grinning SYR walked towards him while holding a maid outfit. Same green and white scheme as the other girls, but far more intricate and with a goth style added to it. It looked like the classical outfit you'd see in a novel, with a long gown that reached his ankles and frilly ends. No. Wait a second. Come on, SYR, you wouldn't do this to me, right? Mama, please don't. Anything else but that. No can do. SYR was so excited. I can't say no when she looked so happy at the idea. Nio. The Girls of Iris Familiar chapter notes hello everyone. Happy late Halloween. Sorry about last week. I know I missed one update, so I will make another upload tomorrow, but for the Genshin Impact story, not this one. I also want to talk a second about the relationships. I understand why they might feel rushed, but I want to say that while this story will have lots of different plot lines, it definitely won't focus as much on the relationship. To be completely fair, this story follows more of an Erage or any other kind of porn game where the relationships develop unexpectedly fast. Moreover, you have to consider that this is a fantasy medieval world where societal values are completely different, as well as the fact that we are drawing ideas from the anime platform, i.e. anything ridiculous goes. I don't think I have to say this, but a harem like this would never fly in our modern society. The way people think about such relationships in this story and most animes really is simply a fantasy we like to play out. That is without acknowledging the fact that this story has way more heroines than even the 100 girlfriends who really love me. This is also the only story where such a massive unplanned harem will happen. Normally just not adding more girls would be the best idea, but know that just for this one it won't be possible. In that regard, any advice or suggestions to keep the relationships alive rather than unmentioned and forgotten would be welcome. No matter how ridiculous, it would still be considered. That being said, let's go on to reviews. With that said, I hope you enjoy the chapter. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Bell stood there while grumbling as he now wore a maid outfit. It was so embarrassing and he could not understand for the life of him what he did to deserve this, but he had no choice but to endure it. Memar Mia's orders were absolute unfortunately, and no matter how much he tried, he couldn't convince Mia to reconsider. Holding a broom in his hand, he swept the floor clean, though his frown never left his face. Chloe found herself unable to resist the temptation to pinch his butt every once in a while, the sight of him in a maid, awakening a new fetish beside her Shota harem obsession. Not only was she a Shotokan, but now she had also a thing for handsome men cross-dressing into hot-looking women. Oh, cheer up, there is worse. No, Chloe, there really isn't anything worse than this. I'd rather face Udius alone than wear this. I'm not going to hear the end of this when the other girls see this. Hee, I'm sure they'll like it very much. They definitely will, and that is not a good thing. One full day. That is how long he had to wear that. Breakfast, lunch rush, and then the most dreaded time. Night. Dinner and late night were always filled with people, particularly adventurers. This would likely haunt his memories for all eternity. Kyun. Belle yelped again as Chloe spanked him before running off and leaving the Renard unable to scream at her. His attention, however, was soon attracted by the bell of the front door chiming, signifying the presence of customers. He had been so busy sweeping the floor that he didn't realize that the hostess had opened in the meantime. To his absolute horror, however, the first person to enter the establishment was Amaterasu, accompanied by her familiar and the imperial family. Upon entering, the eyes of the 6 Renard sisters locked onto his figure. Akari looked confused. Shinano, Amaji and Kaga were surprised, but Akaji and Musasha had a teasing and feral look respectively. He barely got a word in of his greeting before Musasha, of all people, whisked him away. Mia sighed and for a moment was tempted to shout at the girl to unhand her employee, but decided to let it go after seeing the look the purple-haired woman had in her eyes. Anya in the meantime giggled as she took over for Belle, guiding the other members to their table. Damn, can't believe Musakai of all people did that. Akaji was as shocked as the others were, with the only one being confused being Akari. Luckily a white lie later and the girl stopped asking what Musasha and her big brother were doing. The last thing they needed was for her to understand what the 2 Renards were doing in the back of the hostess. Luckily the 2 came back a few minutes later, no visible marks aside from the bright red blushes on their faces. Well. What do you have to say in your defense, Wani-chan? Musasha didn't look at Akaji, already imagining the smug smile on her face, but the stare that she noticed was on Shinano's face terrified her, causing her to silently sit down as far away as possible from her. The rest of the time passed by quickly, with Belle acting as professionally as he could with a squeak here and there as he was groped by Akaji and Chloe, though they would earn a glare from Shinano that sent a shiver down their back whenever they did. More and more people began arriving as news of the rising star serving people in a maid outfit spread through the city. Of course, amongst the people who heard this and decided to take this opportunity to mock him was a certain irate noble. As soon as he entered and spotted the male, made his mouth opened before Syr could welcome him in. Ha! Look at the mighty rising star of Orario. Spotting Amaterasu with her familiar and the imperial family, he looked at them and pointed at Belle, who was ignoring him. Is this really the man that you have fallen for? Look at him. He is disgracing himself with a humiliating outfit, parading it without a care. How is such a pathetic man worthy of you? But neither Akagi nor Musasha were listening. Shinano too was just focused on Bell's figure as he walked around and took orders. Hey, did you hear a word of what I said? Mia was contemplating whether or not to shout at him and kick him out or just see where this was going. It didn't seem like it bothered Belle, as a glance at the boy in question and she saw he shook his head, telling her not to bother, and the other patrons were just watching as if it was a show, so for now she'd just keep quiet. Just because he was forced to cross-dress as a punishment doesn't make him unworthy of my sisters. As a matter of fact, he is more than worthy and they love him dearly. This scene won't do anything to lessen their love for him. Rather, I think they are just finding this amusing and falling further and further for him. But even supposing that he wasn't worthy, he is still far more worthy of our attention than you ever will be, and I'd pick him over you any day of the week. Silence reigned supreme all around the table. The ever-calm and neutral woman that was Amagi spoke for the first time against Murakami while carrying a harshness to her tone that had never been heard of before. It would have seemed like even she had a limit to her ever-boundless patience, and she simply couldn't stand it when someone insulted her sister's lover. Not when he was a simply wonderful man that had done nothing of wrong. Rather, she had to agree with Musasha that the outfit was irresistibly adorable on him. The man had been shocked into silence, but before he could regain his wits and talk back, Anya grabbed him by the collar before tossing him out. The cat girl simply couldn't stand him anymore, so she had decided to take matters into her hands, earning the grateful nods of many from within the pub. Thanks, Anya. Turning around, she found Belle giving her a smile while giving the orders he got to May. No problem, Belle. He was getting annoying anyways. Besides, you've got a long day before you. It's still just the morning after all. With a skip to her step, she passed by Belle, giving him a pat on the back, and returned to her work. I guess that's true. That the rest of the morning passed by with no other problems whatsoever. Amaterasu and the rest of the Far Eastern group also left soon after, though not without getting a few teasing jokes in, much to his embarrassment. However, that was just the first of few to come and greet Belle. It wasn't until lunch rush that he was greeted by another group of acquaintances. It was while he was busy cleaning a table that his name was called out. Belle-sama. He would always recognize that voice anywhere, but when he turned around he was met with a far larger group than he had anticipated. Standing at the front of the group were Belia and Belfast, followed by the three white siblings. However, following behind them were quite a few women he hadn't seen before, including who he assumed was the goddess, if her divine energy was any hint of her identity. He found it amazing how each one of them was a distinct beauty on par with his girlfriends. A familia composed only of beautiful women. It wasn't the first time given his time with Astrea and her familia, and though he hated to admit so, he had to give it to Zeus. Orario truly was the place to go if you wished to find a hub of pretty girls. Oh, Belle-chan, how are you? Great. You also became a maid. Despite the humiliation that the Renard felt, Belia was ecstatic to see that he too chose to join. Her and don the maid outfit. The other more mature women, however, saw the slight droop of his ears as he tried to play along for the sake of the child. I have to say I did not expect this, Belle-sama. Belfast, please erase this from your memory. Mia forced me to wear this for not showing up for so long. Fufu, I think it suits you very well. Who knows, perhaps we can spend some time together under the guise of teaching you the way of us maids. Who knows, it might be beneficial to you if you wear this again. I'd rather not wear it ever again. Geez, you look really handsome as a man and really hot as a woman. If only you had more in the chest department, you'd give most women in Orario a run for their money. That is because I'm a man at the end of the day, Hornet. Hornet snickered until the white-haired goddess approached them. Now, ladies, aren't you going to present me to your new friend? The goddess had silver hair neatly tied up in a braided crown with long bangs flowing down each side of her face. Her eyes were a brilliant azure color, and of course, as expected of a divine being, she was beautiful beyond comprehension. Apologies, Kami-sama. Belle-sama, let me introduce you to our leader. This is our goddess Iris-sama. It is a pleasure to meet you, Kami Iris. Oh, the pleasure is mine. Belfast and Hornet talked a lot about you. I hope it's not bad things. Oh no, they only sang praises. That's a relief. Let me guide you to your table. Very well, I shall introduce the rest of my familia while you take our orders. Belle proceeded to lead the group at the round tables, normally occupied by Loki or other such large groups. Seeing how large the familia was, he dragged over several tables to make enough space for all the members, who sat in groups instead of all sitting at one big table. Since there wasn't one big enough for all of them, where he let them sit before handing out menus. As the gentleman he made sure to pull out the chair for the goddess, which was very appreciated if her smile was any indicator. As he went around the tables, he was introduced to the members currently present before him. Sitting with Iris were the three white sisters whom he had met albeit briefly at the tournament, as well as another girl he hadn't seen before. She briefly introduced herself as Washington. She seemed easygoing and nice, with white hair like his and sky-blue eyes. Unfortunately, he didn't spend much time and moved on to other tables as soon as he was done taking their orders. Sitting at the next tables were Belfast and Bellier, accompanied by two mature-looking women. Monarch, who looked strict and intimidating with her sharp facial features and her red eyes and hair, but turned out to simply be nice but less emotionally outgoing, similar to Artoria. The other one was the girl called Drake, with white hair like him but golden eyes like a Valis coin. She was extroverted and charismatic in a way that reminded him of Elise, but a bit more contained with her energy. Following them, he had the pleasure to meet Hindenburg, Aja, Bismarck, and August. Unlike the previous girls, Hindenburg proved a little more difficult. She wasn't rude, but she was prideful and strict, valuing results more than anything. Bismarck, on the other hand, though hard-working, was a gentle and much kinder woman, who gave credit where credit was due, even if she seemed to find it hard to speak her heart. Aja too was nice to speak to, but she was a lot more energetic and less reserved, similar in a way to Hades, but far more elegant and mindful of her manners. She was a battle junkie and prideful, but not arrogant. In a way, she also reminded Belle of Akagi, as she seemed to love to tease him. August, while seemingly a quiet and reserved girl, turned out to be a lot more prideful and sadistic than he had imagined, though she meant good deep within, unlike Hindenburg. Not wanting to risk the wrath of the two less friendly girls, he quickly moved on with the orders. Greeting him at the following table, he met Harbin, future best friend of Elise if he were to guess. She shared his lover's outgoing and excited personality as well as her charisma. The main difference being that she was more of a battle junkie like Hades and less of a flaunting woman like Elise herself. Hua Jia, on the other hand, was a far more normal girl than the others. Similar to Hornet, she was a little of a troublemaker. Not necessarily naughty, but she loved to play and have fun. Unlike the two of them, Huan Xiecheng, the final member, was perhaps the most intimidating, but surprisingly she was not as quiet or distant as he expected her to be. Imagining to have another Hindenburg situation due to her mask, she turned out to be strong-willed and a diligent girl, though also being shy, caring and supportive. Just like all the girls before, none of them seemed to mind his current attire, perhaps being used to Belfast and the other maids, which apparently are part of the familia. The following table was occupied by the Sovetskaya sisters. Just like the white siblings, there were three members, those being Soyuz, Roshia, and Belorusia. Sitting along them was Crunchtet, a girl who was straightforward, a little airheaded and stubborn. The siblings, on the other hand, were unlike her. Soyuz, the eldest, was a talkative yet reserved and quiet woman who showed to also be diligent. Belle found it easy to converse with her and surprisingly fun. Though she is the ideal representation of a pure girl, she also showed to have a slightly shameless side, as when Hornet joked that Belle was flirting with her, she simply responded saying that he'd have to be ready to take responsibility if that was the case. Her two siblings, Roshia and Belorusia, on the other hand, only shared their bodily proportions and beauty. Personality-wise, the two were much more loud and forwards. However, if he were to point out some unique points, then it was that Belorusia was a lot more tactical and cunning, while Roshia preferred to just wear her heart on her sleeve. Belle, get a move on. I don't pay you to chat with customers. Technically you do. Oh, getting smart with me, are you? Seeing her crossing her arms, Belle decided not to risk his chances and moved on to the next table. As he turned around and left in a hurry, he could hear the giggles of the sisters, much to his embarrassment. Hee, I'll get to work. His next orders took him to Brest, Bayard, Brennus, and Alsace. Brest, a blonde beauty who called herself a singer. Like the bards he had seen in his village, she loved to poetically weave songs and tell tales, dramatically talking to him and calling him champion. Bayard, on the other hand, acted like your typical soldier. She was dedicated, diligent, and loyal to the familia, saying it was destiny for her to join and that she would follow her goddess like the knight she raised herself to be. Alsace always wore a smile, and upon questioning her mask, Bayard revealed that the blue-haired girl was extremely shy and refused to take off the mask since she'd get overloaded with embarrassment otherwise. She was naive, airheaded, and surprisingly very adorable due to her pure personality. The last silver-haired girl too shared the airheaded and naive personality, though she tried to cover it up with a tough act. Over here, Belku and Tilda, calling him over, was Mogador, a girl who, much like Akagi, had a rather open and lewd disposition, who sat with 3 other women. Always hinting at risque situations and innuendos, she was only stopped as Clemenciu slapped, literally, some sense into her. Strasbourg, for all the confidence she radiated, revealed that it was more of a facade. She loved music and tended to compose when she was free. She was a shy and innocent woman who was a sucker for romance, causing her to easily get attached to the people who she got along with. The other 2, Algerie and Clemenciu, were a breath of fresh air, as they were your regular kind older women, easygoing and with no weird quirks, which let Belle relax for a change. Finally came the last table, also consisting of yet another 4 young and beautiful women, the 4 being Roma, Vittoria, Imperia, and Napoli. Roma and Napoli shared their adult charm as well as their naughty and bold behavior. Vittoria, however, was a strict and upright individual, always keeping everything in order, and though she wasn't a fan of the pervy behavior of her friends, she does have a gentle and playful side with those close to her. Imperia, on the other hand, was a lazy yet haughty being, who flaunted like Elise, though with the addition of a yawn here and a yawn there. You have a very interesting familiar, Iris-sama. Hee, I do. I hope to present the rest of the girls to you, but they are currently out of Orario. We just recently moved to Orario after all. I see. While I would love to chat with you, I'll have to get going. Don't want to delay you or have Mamma Mia skewer me. Fufu, of course. Thank you, Belle. It was nice meeting you, but don't let me keep you any longer. Wouldn't want you to suffer to Mia because of me. Belle bowed and made his way to May, once again handing her the list of orders, which was a lot more demanding as it was now lunchtime. Soon the place began filling with customers, most of which he noticed were female. Apparently, news of him in a maid outfit had spread, and the ladies all wanted to get their fair share of this moment. To his dismay, he felt their eyes glazing his body. Their satisfaction came at the cost of his humiliation, but unfortunately it was his job, so he resigned himself to his fate. Belle dutifully went around, showing his bright smile to the many girls who yelped excitedly at the sight while taking their orders. Forwards and back, he kept passing orders from May while she gave him the completed dishes to bring back. Belfast and the girls watched him diligently carry out his job as a waitress, finding his dedication and tenacity impressive. Hey there, cutie, think I can feel you up a little? As usual of Amazons, they felt no shame in making such brazen requests. He wasn't surprised any longer by such forwardness, but to his surprise Hornet came to his rescue, draping her arm around Belle, shooing off the woman. Sorry lady, this maid is taken by yours truly. Oh well, better luck next time I guess. The dark-skinned woman quickly returned to her group while Belle shot the blonde girl a smile. Thanks, Horny. That's going to stick, isn't it? It will. Well, you can thank me with a kiss, you know. After all, isn't this where the hero gets a kiss from the damsel in distress? Well, all right. Huh. Not expecting him to agree, she went beet red when he leaned in and placed a light kiss on her right cheek. He could only chuckle as she stumbled back, but seeing he had orders to deliver, he turned around and started walking away, though not without using his tail to gently and sensually trace up the side of her body and around the bottom of her chin, ending it with a gentle flick her nose. Hee, while I appreciate your help, don't expect this to become a regular thing. Elise did, however, say that I should show my gratitude appropriately. Ah, yeah, okay. Belle returned to serving the customers with his usual smile, unperturbed by the common pervy requests that popped up here and there, while Hornet sat with the biggest blush she had ever experienced, to the shock of Enterprise and the giggles of Yorktown. Welcome to the hostess of fertility. He cheerfully greeted a group of 4 girls, all adventurers from the looks of their equipment. Upon realizing who was serving them, they all squealed and giddily followed him as he guided them to their tables. Excuse me, but could I request your autograph? Belle was not expecting of all requests to be asked for an autograph. Elise had mentioned that he was getting popular, but he still hadn't been expecting it so suddenly. Of course, where would you like me to sign? How about my tits? Belle fought with his mind to repress the blush and slowly shook his head. Luckily, all the exposure to Akagi, Musasha, Elise, and Kagaya had helped him temper his embarrassment. I apologize, but I will have to deny that request. It is a public establishment after all. Oh shucks, then please leave it in my diary. Producing a small pocket-sized diary, he used his pen to perform an artistic autograph that he devised at Elise's request. Hee, I got an autograph. Thank you so much. No problem. Now what will you order? Iris from her place watched with interest as the Renard kept on tirelessly working. So, you really are not crushing on him? Belfast had left her table to join her goddess at her request, only to receive that question. For a moment she stared at Belle and contemplated her feelings before answering. Admittedly, his gentle soul has sparked a bit of an attraction in me, but I can't say I have a crush on him, Iris-sama. I would like you to take some time off your duties to explore more of these emotions. You seem very invested in my relationship with him. Of course I am. I will spare you all the little details of why I am so invested, but to put it shortly, I just want to see you happy, Belfast. You are in your prime. You should take the chance to explore your love life. You've always been working so hard for the girls and looking after everyone, so why not look for someone to look after you instead? Tell you what, you know how we weren't going to participate at the ball, right? Since none of the girls were interested in going. How about we go? Just me and you, maybe Hornet since she seems to have been teased by him. See if you can get a dance with Belle maybe and deepen your connections with his other girlfriends too. Fufu, very well. I shall not waste this opportunity since I do find the time I spend with Belle-sama very fulfilling. Good. Hee, maybe we'll get some new members. Please hold your reins, Iris-sama. I have enough to worry about with Belia and the other girls. I don't think I'd have the time to take care of my own children. Who knows? Iris Familia had left not too long after, leaving a hefty tip for Belle. Hornet, still blushing, could not face him as they left, with the last ones walking through the exit being Belia and Belfast as they thanked him for the service. With the lunch rush over, him and the girls of the hostess were able to have a break and prepare for the night, the period where the most people were going to be coming. He also had the terrible feeling that Baphomet would deliver on her promise then. He just hoped that there wouldn't be too many problems. As the sun descended and night began rising, the rush that was the late hours began. Whether it was to have dinner, celebrate their dungeon runs, partying or just drinking, the pub was almost filled permanently with people. Belle had to suffer knowing that many of the people here were adventurers and they had just seen him in a maid outfit. The first people to enter that he recognized were the members of the Enki Familia. Their goddess, flanked by Gilgamesh and Enkidu and followed by a few other members he didn't recognize, entered the establishment. Not one to make them wait, he made his way to them and greeted them in classical waitress manner. Gilgamesh was the first one to recognize him, though he had to question his current attire, not having expected the tournament champion to be serving as a waitress in a maid outfit. Not that he had anything to complain about, he did look cute in his honest opinion. Not that I needed to know that, Gilgamesh, but the maid outfit is a punishment Mamma Mia is subjecting me to. Normally I wear something more similar to a butler's outfit. Ah, that makes more sense now. Belle began leading them to their table while conversing with the ancient king, not noticing the curious gaze he was getting from a certain blonde girl. As for why I'm a waiter, well, while I'm an adventurer of the Takemikazuchi Familia, my main affiliation is with the hostess. I alternate between adventuring during the day and working as a waiter during the night. I just sought to do something that didn't mean fighting for your life. I see you're a man of many talents. Thank you, Gilgamesh, but I don't think being a waiter can really be considered a talent of mine. The doorbell soon rang again, signaling another group of people had come in. Except this time it was another batch of people he knew. Oh, there you are, B.L.L. Uemetasama. With a resigned sigh he placed the orders for the Enki Familia before greeting Baphomet and her familia. You look very cute. Thank you, Metasama. Now allow me to guide to your place. The knights followed wordlessly until they each sat at their positions. The goddess, however, smiled smugly and teased him as soon as she got off her shock. Wearing a maid outfit. Didn't know you were into that kind of thing. I wonder what the old man would dash when her eyes met his. However, she froze. Though he smiled, his face darkened and his glowed ominously. He then leaned down so only she could hear, his hand tightly gripping her shoulder. Meti, if Zeus hears a word of this little unfortunate event of mine, and I mean even the slightest notion, at least from you, I promise you will not see the day of light again. No level 7 executives of yours will save you from me. I assure you, I have many ways to make you suffer and death will be the least of your concerns. Am I clear? The goddess nodded furiously. Not a word. Yes, sir. Their conversation was interrupted by the sudden ruckus of a chair getting knocked over, followed by the shouting of a few men. Goes without saying that Mia called out his name and ordered him to take care of the fuss. Excusing himself, he walked over to the group of 4 men arguing. Barely evaded death. Berkuli could see the look of pure terror in his deity's eyes. No, something worse. In the meantime, the 4 men didn't see the Renard walking towards them until they found themselves hanging upside down by their legs. The white fluffy tails that kept them suspended then carried them over to face Mia's wrath, coming face to face with the owner. All right, you 4, pay up. Hey, Wait, we haven't finished eating. Is that so? Bell, show them what happens when they make a mess in my place, and retrieve the due payment. Yes, Mama. Bell proceeded to walk out of the pub with the 4 men in his possession. Enki and Baphomet Familia looked curiously until they were startled by the screams and shrieks produced by the 4 burly men. Bell soon came back in with a large bag that contained a hefty amount of mora and handed it to Mia. Good, now get back to work. Yes, Mama. Both Enki and Baphomet members later learnt of how dangerous the hostess truly was. Though it had great food and even better service, the moment you got on their wrong side you'd be met with swift retribution. A fellow patron revealed how aside Bell, who was a level 5, now famous thanks to the tournament, 3 of the waitresses were skilled level 4s while Mia herself was a level 6, with the rest of the staff either being unblessed or low level 1s. Damn. Talk about a powerhouse. He's still a cutie with that outfit though. You said something, Metasama. Hiek. The goddess slowly cranked her head around to see that he was now standing next to her. No, oh of course not. Just thinking, you look really dash. Please finish that sentence and I will make sure to imprint the definition of pain in your mind, respectfully Metasama. No one around them dared to speak up, not even the members of Baphomet's Familia, despite the threats to their goddess. Something about his face promised a swift punishment to any and all those who dared defy him, which was enough of an incentive to stay out of it. All except the ever-fearless Kirito, who apologized on his goddess' behalf. Bell, could forgive Baphomet-sama, just this once please. He clapped together his hand as if praying and awkwardly smiled, hoping he wouldn't get chopped in half. He was judged by the Renard's eyes for a moment, sending a shiver down the man's back, with the Renard contemplating whether or not to accept, before relenting at his request. I guess this can be forgiven once. I hope you will be more mindful, Metasama. I will. Bell decided he had terrorized the leader of the Knights enough for a day and opted to return to his tasks as a waitress. Luckily he got to rest as Mia granted him a short break since he had been working since morning. Taking this opportunity was Gilgamesh, who invited him over to their table. If you don't mind, Bell, I wanted to introduce someone to you. Of course, I don't mind. Good, this is Angelica Ainsworth, my apprentice. Since she's about your age, so I was hoping you'd be able to offer her the kind of company and attention I can't. The mentioned person was a girl, a little shorter than he was. She had long golden hair tied in a twin pigtail fashion while her eyes were bright blue. Despite the young age, she had definitely the body of a grown adult. Not that he wanted to be a pervert, but her chest size was definitely a feature that was hard to miss. Other than that, he could definitely tell that she was his apprentice as she wore the same style of armor as Gilgamesh. Golden in color with a red half-skirt and a black shirt that only worked to highlight her defined mounds. Looking at the armor, however, he became curious why she had decided to leave her most vital areas vulnerable. Large pauldrons protected her shoulders while vambraces completely covered her forearms. Her waist and legs were also heavily guarded, with the only gaps being around the knees and elbows. Yet despite all that armor, her entire thorax and stomach were completely exposed. Unless the shirt was enchanted, he doubted it would do much to stop an attack. Is there something on my chest? The young knight asked with a blush, causing Bell to recoil back in embarrassment. No, sorry, I didn't mean to stare. It's just I was wondering why you wore no armor on your upper body. That, however, only caused her to blush even brighter until Gilgamesh explained for her. Oh that, well, her body's generous size and rapid growth has forced her to keep sending her chest piece to be constantly adjusted since, as you can see, she has an above-average bust. Having outgrown the previous set, we had to send it to be adjusted a few days ago. It has yet to come back as of now. Ah, I see. Angelica could only whine in shame as her secret was revealed to him. As I mentioned, I hope you two can be friends. The girl immediately stopped wallowing in despair and straightened up, offering her hand to him in a polite gesture to greet him. It's a pleasure meeting you, Bell. Likewise, Angelica. Just try not to charm her too fast, Bell. Both teens blushed red as others around the table all laughed and chuckled. Is that another reason you introduced me to her? Maybe. After spending the rest of his break talking and getting to know his new friend, he was soon forced back to his duties as a waitress. Both Baphomet and Enki Familia left shortly after finishing their dinners, only staying to chat a little with Bell. After an arduous night shift, he was finally able to return to his room where he collapsed, exhausted by his job, made only harder as he had to wear the maid outfit. He was never going to hear the end of it from Elise, Kagaya, and Akaji, that much he was sure of. What he wasn't expecting was the knock at his door when it was close to midnight. With a confused tilt of his head, he opened the door to find Elise standing there. With a tired sigh yet a happy smile, he let her in, much to her joy. She spent no time to hug him and give him a tender kiss, which he enjoyed a lot. The warm embrace of his lover did help him relax, which was a welcoming effect after the tough work he had to go through. Too tired, I guess. Too tired. Cuddles. Cuddles. Elise wasted no time changing into her comfy yet slightly risque nightwear consisting of a red see-through gown and her panties before glomping onto her beloved fox and tucking the two of them under the sheets. Belle's ear was filled with her giddy giggling, as she apparently missed the feeling. Mao, you got taken constantly by Musisha. It's kinda unfair. By now she probably had sex with you more than I did. Hee hee, sorry about that. No, don't apologize. Musisha needed that. That transformation she underwent was a surprising change after all. The lust that came with it was just a side effect. Can't fault either of you for that. Besides, now we have 4 nine-tailed foxes. I guess we do, which brings to the fact that Akagi wants the same kind of relationship. Well, she did get everyone's permission, Tilda, so you shouldn't keep her waiting too long. Wouldn't be fair to her, you know? I know you say to not take things too quickly, but don't keep her waiting for weeks or months. You know how much she wants it. Artoria is one thing, Akagi is another. Yeah, I guess you're right. The only reason I wanted to go a bit slower was for her sake, but I guess I was doing it more for mine. Yep, so make sure to treat her right from now. You're not taking advantage of her if you go along with her wishes. Unlike Shinano, she knows exactly what she wants, trust me. Tomorrow you have a long night. You will have to dance with everyone. And I mean everyone. Starting with me, you will then have to dance with Zu, Ati, Musakai, Akagi, Kagaya, Lion, Astrea, Shinano, and whatever other girl you ensnared. Those from Baphomet Familia too. Ooh, you have a long line, mister. Why yeah, I do. I will do my best to accommodate everyone. Luckily the new skill I developed, the one I told you about at the tournament, can help with that. Hee hee, to think your love for us manifested as a skill, I can't wait to see its effects tomorrow. Kyun, please don't tease me. The red-haired captain, however, found his adorable face irresistible and nuzzled his cheek affectionately. All right. Let's sleep, you have a long day tomorrow. It was early in the morning when Belle and Elise stood in front of the hostess. The Renard, wanting to send off his girlfriend as she returned to the Stardust Garden, accompanied her out. Before she could leave, however, they spotted the Golden King Gilgamesh walking towards them. Accompanying him were Enki, Enkidu, and Angelica. Good morning, Belle, Scarlet Harnell. Oh, if it isn't the King of Babylonia. And who is the cutie? Belle could already see the stars shining in her eyes as she laid them on the blonde beauty. Elise, please, don't. Why not? I did mention that it would be an interesting development. Not aiding the situation, Gilgamesh approved of his girlfriend's idea. You heard that, Belle. He could only groan at the headache he felt coming while Angelica flushed at the comment. But allow me to introduce her to you. She is Angelica Ainsworth and my apprentice. Hee hee, nice to meet you. I hope to welcome you as my sister soon, if you know what I mean. Yes, it's a pleasure to meet you. By the way, am I disturbing? I was hoping to speak with Belle, but it can wait if you're busy. Gilgamesh had noticed the two together and mistook it for an ongoing date. Oh no, I was only here since I wanted to spend the night with my adorable fox. Unfortunately, until the ball tonight, I am busy attending to my duties as captain, as are the other girls. I know Kagaya, Tsubaki, Musasha, and Akagi are all busy with familiar-related business, and Ati has to help her brother with management of the territories, even here in Orario. So he's all yours until the dance starts, unless you have something to do, Belle. Not today. I'd be happy to talk with you, Gilgamesh. Why don't we head in? We can discuss in there. Before you have fun, I have to go. Love you, Belle. Cupping his face, she gave him a quick kiss before leaving with a giddy smile. Belle watched her bob her head left and right as she sang a tune, happily skipping off in the distance. Angelica, on the other hand, was left shocked by the sudden action, causing Belle to awkwardly laugh. Sorry about that. Oh no, I find it wonderful that the two of you can display your love openly like that. It's just, I'm not used to seeing it myself. I see. Anyways, please let me guide you inside. Leading them inside, Mia was already behind the counter, making preparations for the morning. Having just opened, the girls were all scrambling around getting everything set and ready. We'll all take a breakfast set. Just to talk. Well, Miss Mia, If there is anything I learnt yesterday is that a small amount of valor is all it takes to keep us on your good side. Ha ha ha, very well lad, you got me there. Just follow Belle and he'll sit you down. While she handed the order to May, Belle sat down with the group at large round table. Sorry about that, there was no need. Nonsense, Belle. It is a place where you eat and drink, it's just natural. Besides, the quality of the food more than makes up for the amount of valor I have part with. I'm sure May will be happy to hear that. With that being said, I wanted to discuss something with you, after which I was hoping you could keep Angelica company as she takes care of some business until the ball tonight. Hey, that's the first time I'm hearing about this though. The girl was clearly surprised by the sudden development, but Belle had no issues accepting his request, much to her embarrassment. What I wanted to discuss about was your fight with Tanjiro. First of all, allow me to say that it was an incredible duel. Both you and Tanjiro have really impressed me. But getting to the point, what we were curious about was the strike you performed at the end. Ah, yes, I can see where this is going. It's because it had a similar effect as your spell, isn't it? So you did notice, that's right. To be more specific, the power to cut space and time. That is what you did, and until now only I could do so. With great power comes great responsibility, but you probably know it better than anyone with that powerful spell you demonstrated when Evelus attacked. That's why I trust you know how to handle it. Rather than that, what I want to know is how that is possible. While it is true that I can do that, it is through a spell granted by my fauna that I can perform that act. You, on the other hand, use your sword techniques, which from what I've seen doesn't come as a product of one's blessing. You're right about that. I don't know all the specific details. For that you would have to ask Takemikazuchi or Amaterasu, but what I can tell you is that breathing styles in general is a method of us adapting our breathing to bring out the uttermost potential of our body. After which, of course, comes the elemental aspect. I don't know how we are able to conjure the elemental power, but each practitioner envisions the related breathing style, for example water, and seeks to become one with it, to replicate its fluidity within its swordsmanship and footwork. With fire you display an aggressive and violent style. My style is still unrefined as it is something I have developed myself. Why, you might ask? Because I simply do not believe I can reach my goals with what I already had. The sun breathing technique is powerful, and while I'm suited for it, I do not see myself mastering it. Every existing breathing technique that has been invented was adapted from sun breathing. Technique as the original, to be more suited for the individual using it. Every person walks a different path, thus requiring different styles to suit them. Of course, like with every rule, there are exceptions, such as Tanjiro. I'm not sure if it's because of his ability to adapt, but he is one of few who can truly master the sun-breathing style. Same reason why you have Hashiras, the masters of their respective elements. I, on the other hand, as I said before, cannot see myself reaching the pinnacle of my strength with the sun-breathing technique. I have a high proficiency with it, but I cannot master it to perfection. Same applied to the other styles. Therefore, if you can't make something yours, then you just have to create something which is perfectly suited for yourself. So I sought something that would suit me, to match my grand ambitions and the power I required. Thus the astral breathing style I developed aimed to replicate the same almighty brilliance of the stars, a power above that of Gakkai and Tenkai. I see. The stars. Truly something that exists in the same realm of power as space and time. You must have quite the ambition guiding you then, to go after the celestial lights. That I cannot share. I see. Do not worry, it is not my right to pry, so I will not ask any further. I was just surprised, as in my long life I had never met another being who could wield the same power I did. But I'm glad I met you now and not 700 years ago. Why? Angelica couldn't help but fixate on the way his ears twitched and wiggled around, almost feeling tempted to touch them, but quickly reminded herself that she had no desire to be splattered into a pool of blood by his tail. Because my ego was too great for my own good. I was foolish, drowning in the rashness of youth and vanity. Hubris was my path as much as it was observation. I was supposed to rule the city of Uruk, now renamed Babylonia, and watch over humanity. Instead I acted as I wished, selfishly and arrogantly. I was no king or ruler but a tyrant. My egotism knew no bound. It was, now that I look back on it, pathetic and quite honestly shameful. Really, I thought people grew wise with age. Ha, you're not wrong, Belle. They do indeed. But I, as a being who was immortal, had a perspective of life that was more similar to that of the gods than what of a humans. I saw myself as the absolute definition of perfection and my word as law. I saw life as something I had complete control over. While over the past 800 years I did grow wiser, before that I went from ambitious to conceited. Only after truly experiencing life, with all its ups and downs, and eventually learning to love the people who I ruled over did I began seeing the truth. I changed slowly but surely. Now instead of placing myself before the city and people, I do the opposite like a true ruler should. If you had seen me back then, the only facial features I would have been capable of showing you would be a frown, a cocky smile, and a look of pure wrath. That's all there was to it. You're much more like Yorichi now. Yes, he too, like Kratos has lived a long life. All three of us have learnt to temper our emotions and treat life with caution. Yet despite it all, just as you said, we all took different paths. Our paths, to reach this conclusion, so our perspective may differ a bit, as will the foundation upon which our experiences are built upon. For example, I was born with immortality, while Yorichi was gifted immortality, but Kratos was cursed with it. However, I'm sure we can all agree that we have learnt much, including the value of people's experiences and lives. We must never neglect them or belittle others for what they have or are born with. I can respect your desire to protect the weak, something that I wished more people in Gakkai could share. Yep, you have no idea how much of a troublemaker this king was back then. The green-haired man smiled happily, but his tone carried the irritation of having to rectify his attitude. Sorry, Enkidu. It's fine. Just don't go causing more problems. Both Belle and Angelica were enthralled by the story, with the apprentice never having heard of this aspect of her mentor. Either way, Belle, don't dwell too much on it. You will learn in due time. It is something you will only truly understand by experiencing it, even if I feel like you have experienced much more than what a person your age normally would have. He couldn't help but awkwardly chuckle, as what he said was most certainly true. Lunoir came in soon after with their breakfasts, comprising of bacon and eggs, the good old classic. While eating, Gilgamesh elaborated what exactly he needed from Belle for Angelica. A dress. Yes, we are busy with usual administrative duties, but we don't want to bore Angelica here with all that mess. We were hoping that you could accompany her around the city and eventually also help her buy a dress for tonight's ball. Unfortunately, she has none. A D-dress? I need one. Enki looked outright exasperated when she heard her question the necessity of a dress. Surely you weren't expecting to attend the event in that outfit, were you? As your goddess, I won't allow that. We need to make sure you look your absolute best. It was clear to Belle that she was a very dutiful and diligent person, so much that she had never taken the time to enjoy her own hobbies. He was proven right, as according to Gilgamesh she always trained, believing that she had to always work hard for his sake. It wasn't that she had no interest in fashion and other typical feminine stuff, but she always forced herself to keep focused and thought of them as distractions, renouncing her own interests. That is why I would like to request you to help her make up for all the time she denied herself of these joys. I see. Of course I'd be happy to help. Thank you, Belle. Angelica and Belle walked down the main street, now bustling with people, particularly adventurers who were heading to the dungeon. The blonde warrior seemed fascinated with the culture shock of having all these different people and races in one place, something that Babylonia didn't have apparently. Walking by her side, he guided her to a few different places where she could browse jewelry and other items she fancied. Belle couldn't help but find the way her face lit up amusing, to which he wondered if that was what the girl saw whenever he was near any kind of tasty food. Angelica stopped suddenly as a particular piece seemed to have caught her attention. Luckily, he didn't have to bother with how expensive it was, as Gilgamesh had provided him with a large bag of valise to afford anything the excited girl could ever wish. Should he for any reason have to spend his own money, he even guaranteed that he'd be refunded, which was magnanimously generous of the old king. Then again, Belle reasoned that he was bound to be rich as the king of a city-state. As he looked at the item of his companion's interest, he noticed that it was a simple-looking hairpin with crimson-red feathers fanning out of the golden metal piece. Something that would go along well with her current attire. Knowing she would never allow herself to buy it, so as requested by Gilgamesh, he purchased it before she had the chance to stop him. She was visibly shocked when she saw that, but all she could do was stare at the ornament as her desires betrayed her devotion. Belle, why did you? You didn't have to. This is Gilgamesh's money. Meant for you. Yes, but isn't it better to use it on something like my armor or something? Hearing that, Belle could only sigh. That very sentence is the reason why Gilgamesh asked me to tag along with you. Well, yes, that's true, but just come here. Still flabbergasted by his actions, she walked over to him. Standing in front of her, Belle grabbed the hairpin and put it on for her, bringing their faces close enough that she could feel his warmth on her body. The sudden proximity made the shy girl burst in different shades of red. Once he was sure it wouldn't fall, he took a step back to admire her and nodded satisfied with his handiwork. "It looks good on you." "Yup, you look very pretty." "Huh. I do. Why you think so?" "Yeah. You should be confident about your appearance." Not used to being praised, she could no longer bear to face him, feeling her thumping heart nearly explode from the combined happiness and embarrassment that his actions brought her. Not wanting to have herself pass out on him, Belle distracted her by pointing out to a small stand that sold churros, a new delicacy that has gained popularity and is now as sought out as the Jagamarookans. Luckily that did the trick, and her eyes once again found the exploration of new experiences captivating. MMH. It's so good. Unlike her, Belle had gotten his without the massive load of sugar. He simply wasn't a fan of sweet stuff. It's nice, isn't it? What is? Having fun, eating delicious food, buying items that catch your interest, and experiencing all these moments with your friends. Well, yes. Before you tell me that you have a duty to attend to, tell me this. What do you do on vacations or in your free time? I train. Yes. You do realize that Gilgamesh doesn't want that for you, right? Yeah, you're right. But I just want to become someone he can be proud of. And you can, but you don't have to. No, shouldn't sacrifice your life and desires for it. Remember Gilgamesh's story yesterday? While it is true that the message is to not lose yourself in your desires, at the same time you shouldn't restrict them too much either. You can't have too much of one thing, and that extends to anything. You know, my grandpa said that just like you can't have too much evil, you can't have too much justice either. A balance of both is required for the world to work, and so does your life. Angelica began thinking on what Belle had said. She knew that what he said was true. Both Gilgamesh and Enkidu had encouraged her to do something other than training and studying, but she just felt inadequate compared to her mentors. Feeling as if she didn't put at least this much effort, then she'd not be able to work up to her standards. But Belle, what if I can't become like him? But you shouldn't. Hey, you're not Gilgamesh. You have neither the same experiences nor the same time he has. He didn't make you his apprentice so you could become him, Angelica. You shouldn't compare yourself to others since you're your own person, and that also means you have to go at your own pace. Even if you get recognized by EA, you still wouldn't be exactly like him. Why yeah. You're right about that. Her head tilted down at the difficult topic she was trying to come face to face with. She knew that was true, but it didn't make accepting it an easier task. She had worked so hard to get to this point, but doing as Belle said felt she was throwing it all away. But she shook her head. Of course it wouldn't, since no matter what she decided to do she would still be his apprentice. Just like the Renard by her side was going to be her friend. And more. When she realized what she said, she shook her head, vehemently refusing to let the embarrassment show in the form of a blush on her face. But she ended up failing, particularly when her body betrayed her and her stomach growled in defiance, letting all those around her know that she had to be fed. She didn't have to look at him to know that he was looking at her with mirth. Kill me. How about we visit this new restaurant I've been hearing a lot about from the patrons at the hostess? That would be appreciated. Following the chuckling Renard, they moved through the busy street until they reached a nice-looking establishment tucked away in an alley. Not a dark and dangerous-looking one, but not the most conventional place for a restaurant. With ash wooden walls and an artistic nameboard, that added a bit of flair to the place. The interior was bright but not overly so, as the soft glow of the magic stone-powered lamps provided just enough light to not be a bother. Being a rather small place embedded in between the two buildings facing the main streets, there were no windows. Walls and floors were layered with wood, not unlike Mia's pub. Except the design was minimalistic given the restricted amount of space. Despite it all, it seemed that it was nearly full as only 2 tables were left open. Luckily, despite the busy period, with the waiters delivering orders one after the other, one of the staff took notice of them and was attending them soon enough. Being a waiter himself, it was clear that the staff wasn't prepared for this number of people and were being overwhelmed, lacking people and most likely cooks. The result of an unexpected success which led to their troubles. Knowing how it felt, he could only feel bad for them, as he knew they'd have a hard time. Please feel free to call us when you are ready to order. The man in black and white robes was soon scrambling back to aid his fellow waiters. Seems like they are really busy. They are. It will likely get only harder for them in the evening. After seeing the fights at the tournament, I still find it hard to understand why you work as a waiter. And no, I was not at the Colosseum, I simply watched it from a pub I was at with my familiar members. I just felt like doing something other than fighting. For all the troubles I run into while working as a waiter, it is pretty fun and you get to learn about others. I just find it a lot more relaxing. Was it okay to take your time today? Oh, you mean Mia? She decided to let me off today for the troubles yesterday and because I won't be there for the evening anyways. Besides, my shifts are all in the night since I have my adventurer duties in the morning and afternoon. Just means I will have to make up for it starting tomorrow. Oh, sorry. Don't worry about it. Rather we should order too. You were starving, weren't you? Oh, right. Angelica busily read through the menu, marveling at the wide variety of unknown options that had been offered to her. Soon, she settled for a simple stew of beef, carrots, and potatoes. As he soon learnt from her in Babylonia, advanced recipes weren't common. Ever since the city was founded, most foods consisted of a combination of raw fruits, roasted vegetables, bread, and simple roasted meats, including ducks, geese, pigeons, and fish, though the last option wasn't common. She liked it, but trying the different ways things were cooked, such as fried, steamed, and grilled dishes, was something that she had enjoyed a lot. Not only that, but the combination spices which were seldom used was something new to her. After placing their orders and the waiter left, they returned to sharing stories of their different childhoods. If there was one thing both found interesting, it was the tales and stories they were told as children, some used to scare them to keep them from going out at night or other such naughty behavior children could get up to. While Angelica was told the story of an evil goddess who kidnapped children and turned them into puppets, Belle recounted the tales his grandpa, and the village by extent, used to tell him that a large evil goblin lived in the woods and would devour anyone who approached its territory. Yours sounds a lot less terrifying compared to a goddess running around kidnapping children, but a lot more believable. Well, that was probably because it wasn't a complete lie. Really? Yes, though not a large and evil goblin, packs of regular goblins did in fact inhabit the deeper areas of the forest. But they were only a danger to the children. Any regular adult could take 2 or 3 of those monsters on. Well, I guess that makes sense since monsters on the surface are weaker than the dungeon ones. Here you go, sir and madam. The waiter arrived as soon as they finished talking, serving them their dishes, steam still rising from the plates. Both warriors had shining eyes as their food was presented to them and could hardly wait to taste it, particularly when it looked so appetizing. Angelica picked up her spoon and started to dig into the red stew while Belle began cutting the large roll of bread stuffed with meat. The red color of the meat made the hungry Renard almost drool. Seems you even more excited about this than I am, Belle. Food is the second best thing in this world. What is the first one then? My girlfriends, of course. Angelica was taken aback by the answer. She had momentarily forgotten the fact that he had multiple girlfriends, but hearing him say that left her smiling at the wholesomeness. You really do love them, don't you? Of course I do. I love them all equally. It wouldn't work otherwise. While the two chatted throughout the rest of dinner, she couldn't help but ponder over Belle and his girlfriends as well as the dynamics of their relationship. Before she knew it, they had finished their lunch and were walking into a large building she had never seen before. Inside were many different shops of all variety. What is this place? A mall. It's a new type of building that the gods introduced. It's like a hub for entertainment. Restaurants, shops, theaters, and other such services. I see. As expected of the gods, they bring all sorts of weird ideas, don't they? They sure do. Angelica followed Belle, watching in awe at all the various stores, until they reached a large fancy shop full of elegant dresses and outfits. Each wall was lined up with various styles of dresses, and even the mannequins displayed flamboyant dresses that Angelica had only seen the highest of nobility wear in the past. W8 Belle. What are we doing here? What do you mean? We need to get you a dress for tonight, you know. Why yeah, but all these look so fancy and be beautiful. A beautiful dress for a beautiful girl. Come on, let's go. What? The blonde knight blushed bright red at his words and only increased as he grabbed her hand and led her inside. He thinks I'm beautiful. Her mind was a mess as Belle spoke with a clerk who had approached them upon noticing their presence. In her embarrassment, she couldn't hear what he was saying and could only watch as he pointed at her, and the eyes of the clerk lit up. There was no doubt that she was in for a ride. She had seen the same glint that were in the clerk's eyes in her goddess once before, and that was a memory that haunted her. The sheer number of hours she had spent being used as a dress-up doll for her were painful just to think about. Worry not, dear customer. I'll make this lady look so wonderful you will never be able to take your eyes off her again. It seemed like she was more eager to get to work on styling the perfect dress for Angelica than either of the two warriors were. At least Belle was sure that Angelica would be in good hands. The working woman dragged off the disciple of Babylon, together with several different dresses. Belle couldn't help but feel bad as he watched the overwhelmed girl be stuffed into different dresses. It was clear that showing it off to him was embarrassing, as with each outfit her face grew redder and redder. All right. I think I got it. The perfect match. The curtain was pulled open and Angelica came out once again. This time, however, Belle was properly charmed. Her latest dress was mainly black with highlights of golden like her hair. The bodice tightly hugged her body, showing off her perfect hourglass body. Her chest was more accentuated than ever before, her size being smaller than Elise. Her breasts were held up by the strap that went around back of her neck in a halter style, while making way for a V-shaped space that showed off an ample view of her cleavage while leaving her whole back exposed. The silhouette fanned out, putting the emphasis on extravagant. The hemline was asymmetrical while flaring out handkerchief style. The slanted hemline had a slit that exposed her left upper thigh to at an appropriate level while growing longer as it reached the right side, flowing all the way to her ankle. Angelica had also tried letting down her hair, a stark difference compared to the more unique twin tail she used before. What do you think? Feeling emboldened by his blush, she gave him a twirl, which gave the Renard a full view of the dress. You look gorgeous, Angelica. The girl stopped and grabbed chunks of her hair to hide her face. Thank you. Though quiet, he managed to receive it thanks to his heightened sense of hearing. If you have decided on a dress, should we head back? Mew. Angelica and Belle had returned together to the hostess by late afternoon. To their surprise, both Takemikazuchi and Enki Familia were present. It seemed like Gilgamesh, Enki, and Takemikazuchi were discussing something, most likely about the relationship between the Renard and Gilgamesh's disciple. Mikoto was the first to notice them and wave them over. Belle took a quick peek at Mia, but luckily it seemed like there was no need for him to get to work, meaning he was free to join the table with his familia. There you are, Belle. I was just talking about you and Angelica with Enki here. That's right. Our Angelica, hurry and show your beloved goddess what dress you picked. Belle could only watch awkwardly as the goddess all but jumped on the flushed warrior. Hey, and now? Absolutely. Belle, picked it for me. Kia, that's so adorable. Now I want to see it even more. Gilgamesh, however, was there to save the poor girl, putting his hand on the deity's shoulder. Not so fast, Enki. I was thinking that having it as a surprise would be nicer. What do you mean by that, sensei? If it's not too much of a problem, I was hoping to entrust you to Belle. Will it be a problem, Takemikazuchi-sama? I know she's not part of your familia, but I would like for her to accompany your group at the ball. Just for the arrival. Of course, that will be no problem. The more the merrier. Enki, however, pouted at the old king. Come on. I just wanted to see her in her dress. And you will. Later at the party, that is. Come on, let's go. Thank you, Belle, Takemikazuchi. This means a lot to me. No need for that. Belle should take responsibility for the ladies he charms after all. The suddenly targeted Renard was quick to retort, albeit without a proper comeback, only complaining to his god, who shrugged it off with a laugh. What? Take. With that, Gilgamesh and Enkidu dragged away a whining goddess and left the establishment. Angelica wasn't sure how to take the sudden development, but luckily Mikoto and Chigusa were there to provide her company until the time for the ball arrived. Belle would have joined too if not for Takemikazuchi grabbing him by the shoulders. Take. All right, now it's time to work on you, mister. What? Why? Why? Because you need to impress, obviously. I want you to look your best, and I won't allow any one of those pesky gods to make fun of you. That is why we're going to make sure you not only look presentable but also learn the ways of a charming gentleman. Is that necessary? It looked obvious to anyone that he wasn't interested, but the glint in the gods I told the others that he had an ace up his sleeve. Belle, don't you want look charming for your girlfriends? Don't you want to impress them and do your best for them? Do you not want to make it one of the best nights for them? Everyone in the establishment was mesmerized by the sight of his ears and tails rising to attention. The only thing that could ever motivate him to do his absolute best and go beyond his limits. His eyes sharpened as his interest was peaked at an all-time high. Let me hear more of these plans of yours, Takemikazuchi-sama. Sorry, Belle, you're too easy. But this is for your own good. Then follow me. I made sure to enlist the help of a man well versed in these areas. Waiting by the door was Hermes, which left Bell questioning the validity of this whole plan, but it was for his girlfriends. He would go through whatever they had planned. Besides, while Zeus did mention to be wary of Hermes since he could be a calculating sly fox, he had also explained that he was a man you could trust when it came towards the more frivolous kinds of favors. Well, Belkuin, let's go. Got to make you look so dashing the ladies will swoon at just your presence. Behind them Mia just watched with narrowed eyes. Let's just hope they don't mess with him too much. Chapter endnotes to be continued. Hope you enjoyed and look forwards to more. As usual, questions and ideas are welcome through reviews and PMS. Please drop by the archive and comment to let the creator know if you enjoyed their work.